morning, everyone. We're going to call our meeting to order. This is the Swanee River Water Management District Governing Board meeting and public hearing. It is January 9th at 9 a.m. And at this time, I would like to have everyone rise for invocation and a pledge. Mr. Keith, would you do the honors, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this beautiful area of the country we get to call home. Father, I ask today a hedge of protection upon the district, in the face of the storm. Father, we praise you for the water. We've had lots of water in the last 30 days, and we need it. We need to recharge, and we thank you for all the natural resources you provide. I pray for wisdom and guidance for this board and staff as we proceed today with the meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Ms. Robin, are you ready for a roll call?
Chair John,
Here.
Mr. Key. Here. Mr. Schwab.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Sessions.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Lloyd.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any amendments to our agenda?
No amendments to the agenda.
All right. I want to also, I think for our listening group, you can join the meeting. It's available in person or by the district's YouTube link. Information regarding the link is located on our website. It's www.myswaneeriver.com. At this time, I don't see any comments on this sheet. And Tyler, do we have any online? No one? All right, we'll go ahead then and do our public comment with those that are in the audience. My first one is Terry Rasmussen. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you all, if I haven't said that yet to you all.
Thank you.
Morning. Thank you.
I'd probably rather be home like most of you today. My husband's very angry that I'm here today, but I'm here of something very important. And I thought we'd be moving along, but in our neighborhood, our pumps are still not working. They have never worked since you amended that permit. They didn't work when you amended it, and they still don't work. There's been, before the last hurricane, the one that was really a hurricane coming through, 2 days before the hurricane, they came through a big crane and took the pump out in the first pond. And we've not seen it really return since. And we've had like 2 or 3 rain. I think we had 9 inches that last storm that came through. So the pond's really high right now, and it's going in the overspill to the neighborhood across the street, which I told Harry. There were 2 guys there yesterday working on it, probably because of some emails Nancy sent out. And I asked them what was going on, and they said they were trying to fix the sump pump. I don't know if that's what we have in there. I don't know. He said, I'm trying to fix the sump pump, and we're waiting on a part. So it's sort of working, but not really. So we're right back where we were when I first came here, and when we first put our complaint in. The pumps still aren't working, and that's probably the most critical part of why we've been coming here, is because of the pumps, and I think you guys understand that. So I wanted you guys to be aware of that in case you're not. So I don't know if there's any monitoring of this, or if it's going to take 2 years for them to get the pump working in there. Is there a timetable that pumps are supposed to be working? Because, if it's going to work, it should work consistently on a 2-year basis to us to know that the pumps are going to work correctly. Not like fix it on the 18th month and now it's working, but we don't know if it's working properly. And I've been told that the pump, what they have set up there is not the correct pump. They haven't replaced the 3-inch pipe, and we know a lot of this is going to take time, but I think the pump should be the critical part. There's a 3-inch pipe that's supposed to be corrected, but when they try to work the pump, it explodes all the things that we have there. They all explode. So it's still too small, and the pump is still too small. I want to understand that the sump pump, if that's what it is, holds 4,000 gallons of water, not 8, which is what is on the permit. And I think that's why you wanted it replaced. So that's why I'm here asking the board, and Hugh Thomas and his team, what we need to do. I mean, we have a meeting tonight, so we're going to ask everybody about it. But I feel like somehow you guys should be monitoring this most critical part of the whole reason we came here and started the complaint, which is the pump to our neighborhood to keep us from flooding. You can go by there right now and you can see how high it is. And if we get a lot of rain today, it will go over the road. So that's why I'm here, and like I said, it's very important, and I know it's nasty out, and we shouldn't be out here, none of us, but that's how important it is to me. And I'm asking for your help, and that's why I'm here today. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
appreciate your time, as always.
Miss Nancy Turner?
Good morning, everyone. Good
morning.
Nancy
Good morning.
Turner. Okay, so I don't want to reiterate everything that Terry just said. Let me just go back a little bit in time. We'll talk about the ancient timeline of this Woodboro North, or what was once Turkey Creek. Back in 2008 to 2011, we all know that's when the original developer was building the subdivision on a permit for 173 acres. And then in 2012, he dissolved the HOA that he believes is responsible for the operation and maintenance of those pumps after he believes that the permit was accepted, or that phase one was accepted. And of course, there's still that I could never find the documentation to prove that, to back that up. So in 2020, he sells phase one. That was never approved. And then in 21, new homes start being built in a dysfunctional stormwater management system. So in May of 2022, the flood concerns were reported to the Water Management District by the residents. And so then we know, fast forward, 2023, September, the new modification is approved. However, at that point in time, the pumps were not working, and they have not worked since. And that's repeating, but anyway, what I'm here to say is that now, here today, we're back at square one. We are right where we were in May of 2022 when we reported that the pumps weren't working or there was something wrong. And the investigation ensued. And then, so I've been communicating with Ben Glass and copy sending to Mr. Keith and Mr. Thomas. So they're aware of the communication I've been having with Ben Glass over the past month. My first communication went on December 18th to let him know where we're at. Front pond is totally full again. And we haven't seen the sprinklers operate since August. And so what I'm understanding from Ben is that the current permit does not require the Water Management District to have any oversight over the pumps and the maintenance. And I want to say that that is precisely how the homes got built in the first place, because there was never any oversight, and nobody ever followed up to know that there were no annual reports coming in about the system, because it wasn't being done. The pumps, I mean the pump maintenance. So this is history repeating itself, and I guess I'm here to ask, is that what this board wants to happen?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Warren, would you mind just briefing the board on if the permit's in compliance at this point in time, or timelines?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. So a little bit of correction to the record is that the permit was issued, I guess it was September last year, upon a demonstration that everything was working out there. We have received communication from Mrs. Turner since then that it indicates things are not working as well as they could. Because this is a little bit of unprecedented, where you have the people living there before the stormwater system's completed, we are kind of interacting on behalf of where their HOA would have interacted, and we're sending the communication on to the engineer and to Mr. Eagle. The other thing I'll point out is most people upon issuance have 5 years to complete the system. This one came with the requirement to do it within 2. So in that respect, they're in compliance. They'll have to demonstrate that everything is working again in order to turn this over to the HOA at that time. So, and we are, just like, every enforcement case takes, if we wanted to go that direction, takes a lot longer through the paperwork and the letters and everything else than it does to actually taking an active involvement and getting the information from Mrs. Turner and passing it along. And that's what we've been engaged in the last couple weeks.
Okay. Any questions for Warren on this from the board? Okay, all right, thank you, Warren.
You're welcome.
May I respond to
I
one thing?
I just have one question. Did y'all ever get your homeowners association established?
We have spoken to an attorney.
Excuse me, Miss Nancy, we need you to come to the podium.
Oh, I'm sorry. Terry alluded to a meeting tonight. That is our very first HOA meeting tonight with Tom Eagles HOA. And we have spoken to an attorney.
Okay.
And so at this point in time, we're working on it.
Okay.
My response to Mr. Zwonka, he said that when the permit was issued, that you all had demonstration or reasonable that the system was working. That was way back in the summertime when back in March of 2023 is when I sent the videos of the pump malfunctioning. Y'all had been out there, or someone had been out there in February the first time to see that the pumps were working. And then they were malfunctioning, and at a point back in the spring of 2023, they came back out because they had them working again. No one came out, to my knowledge, in August or in September, prior to the permit being authorized, to make sure they were working. And I know for a fact they were not, because it was 2 days before Hurricane Idalia when they came and pulled the front pump.
But it sounds
the
like
front
if
one.
you've got your homeowners association and your attorneys involved, you're heading in the right direction.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But I here today, just to again reiterate, do we want history to repeat itself? And if the Water Management District is not going to have any oversight over those pumps functioning, which is the crux of the whole stormwater management system, it sounded to me like Ben Glass was putting it back on the residents to make sure, to have oversight over Tom Eagle. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick. If I'm understanding, you're saying you have 5 years to fix the pumps?
2.
Two. So on the 18th month, they could fix them. We could be waiting till almost 2 years for the pumps to be working. That's what Swanee River Water Management is saying?
The permit says.
So you're telling me we can be at risk for almost 2 years if the pumps aren't fixed correctly?
Well, hopefully
Correct.
with your homeowners association, with whomever, with the owner, y'all be working on that and get the pumps fixed, or
So you guys
Put
have
some
no
pressure on
management
it.
whatsoever
We're gonna
on
have-
our pumps that you approved in our neighborhood? No management whatsoever?
we're going to follow the permit and make sure
To
that
give
they're
them 2
abide by
years to
the
fix the
permit.
pumps?
The
'Cause they'll
permit
wait it
gives
out
them
2
2
years. So we're at flood risk, at your mercy, at their mercy.
Well, if we don't make it rain, I wish we could on dry
No, well, that's why we have
seasons.
the pumps, but the pumps should be working. That's what you all say, the pumps should be working. And you're giving them 2 years to fix the pumps.
They're working within their permit, yes,
So I
ma'am.
asked you to buy our houses.
No,
If we
thank
have
you.
2 years for that pump to work, and they're not working on it whatsoever right now, you should buy our houses, and that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And I thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak during the public comment period? Tyler, do you have anyone online at this point? No? Okay. If there's no one else, we're going to close public comment and move on to our collective consent agenda. And is there a motion?
I make that motion, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All righty. Is it gonna rain? Where's my weatherman?
Yeah.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, ma'am, and we are going to get some rain today, as we can all see, that being a good thing for our district. But I'd like to
I'm sorry,
present,
did you say that would be a good thing?
well, much better than a drought, yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
much
sir.
better.
Yes, it is.
Much better than a drought.
That's
Absolutely.
all in eye of the beholder.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to present the hydrologic conditions report for December 2023. I'd like to thank Edwin McCook for sending me over this great photo. He kind of did a good job cataloging some of the high river levels that we had around the district toward the end of December. This is, of course, Swanee Springs on the Swanee River just up north of town. You can kind of see just what is maybe a half a foot to a foot of the spring house right now. I mean, it was, he took this photo on the 21st, and it was around 55 feet, just under action stage at the river, but you can definitely see how high it is out here. This is due to an increase in rainfall that we had this past month, as we all know, and I'll go through those slides a little bit later. But it's a really good indication of kind of the conditions we were dealing with this past month in December, especially toward the end. And I think it's a great photo, great way to start our December 2023 hydrologic conditions report. Rainfall for December 2023, we had a district-wide average of 8.3 inches. That's over 2.5 times the 1932 to 2022 average of 3.2 inches. Interestingly enough, and I haven't said this in a while, but we ended up with a surplus of 4.6 inches of rainfall. And that's due to the fact that we had a deficit at the end of last month in November of 2.6 inches. We ended up moving that window down from December 2022 when we only had 1.1 inches of rainfall. And then we picked up this 8.3 inches of rainfall. So it was enough to kind of throw us from a deficit to a surplus. So really, really good for us that we ended this 12 months with a surplus. And I did have a couple of statistics before we get to the map. 8.3 inches or 8.28 inches represents the third highest December rainfall in 92 years record. So that was a lot of rainfall we got in December. We ended the year from January to December 2023 with 59.2 inches of rainfall. That is, of course, 4.6 inches higher than that long-term average of 54.7. So we made up for some of the below normal rainfall that we had throughout the year with this El Nino winter that we've had so far. Looking at this map, the 8 to 9 inch range encompasses that district-wide average, and we see a lot of rainfall more in the northern part of the district than we do in the kind of southern and eastern parts. 6 to 7 inches in that light blue and less than 6 inches in the, dark blue 6 to 7 inches, and then the light blue less than 6 inches are over in the Levy, Gilchrist, Bradford, Alachua area. So they got less rainfall than the average amount this past month. However, 6 inches is still almost double that long-term average. So it's still a good amount of rainfall that we got in those lower counties of ours. Higher amounts, the higher than average amounts up in the northern parts, we saw 9 to 10 inches in the red color. And then we had more areas of more than 10 inches of rainfall. Jefferson County, Madison County, even northern Taylor County into Suwannee, and Baker County just a little bit in our district, but mostly the central Baker County showed more than 10 inches, and that's in that pink color on here. So all in all, a lot of rainfall that we got in December 2023. Our biggest rainmaker of the month, really we had a few rainmakers of the month, but this was our biggest. We got over 53 roughly % of our average for the month rainfall from this December 16th through the 17th. We got 4.4 inches of rainfall in those 2 days, that 48-hour period. The average amount would be in the green, encompassed in the green. Of course, we see a lot more rainfall, interestingly enough, in our southern counties than we do in our northern counties on this. So it's almost the complete opposite of what we just saw. We had 5 to 6 inches of rainfall, kind of the first category higher, and we see a lot of that in Dixie, Levy, Alachua, Bradford, Union up into Baker, and some into Columbia County as well. The more than 6 inches of rainfall, that highest category that we saw some of that over in Dixie County, Levy County, up into Alachua County. On the lower end, we saw 3 to 4 inches in that darker blue, and the lighter blue less than 3 inches. Once again, that's kind of in the northern part of our district, stretching over from Jefferson, Madison, Hamilton, into Suwannee, parts of Taylor and Lafayette as well. But as I mentioned, this was about 50 to 53% of our average for the amount of rainfall for the month for the district. This is the 30-day departure from precipitation. This is from the National Weather Service. Really, our entire district is a lot of surplus at this point. A lot more surplus up in the northern part of our district, northern counties. 4 to 5 inches in that kind of darker purple color, the lighter purple color, 5 to 8 inches of surplus. And as we start to move south, we see areas of 3 to 4 inches of surplus in that darker blue color. And once we get down into southern Dixie and over into Levy County, we see less surpluses, but we still see surpluses nonetheless, anywhere from half an inch to 1 inch in light green, 1 to 2 inches in dark green, and we do see some areas of 2 to 3 inches in that lighter blue color. So looking really good as far as rainfall for our district, as opposed to, say, the Panhandle, where they're still seeing some deficits at this point. I would expect for them to kind of make up some of that with these systems that we've got coming through today, and I think we do also have one on Friday. And so I would expect that to change a little bit, but for our district, we're definitely looking good as far as rainfall is concerned. Stream flow conditions for December 2023, the key word is high. We had 9 gauges monitored in our district that ended in the greater than 90th percentile. And those include the Osceola at Lamont, Econfina, Finn Holloway, Steinhatchee. On the Suwannee, we had Rock Bluff, Branford, Ellaville, up into White Springs. And then on the Santa Fe, Fort White. They all ended December in the greater than 90th percentile. Elsewhere, we had some above normal gauges ending the month. Worthington Springs and Graham and New River all ended the month in the 75th to 90th percentile, and those are on the Santa Fe. And then also up in Withlacoochee at Panetta, that one began the month in the normal and ended in the above normal. South Georgia actually saw some improvement in some of the rivers, but not quite as much as we're seeing down here, not as high flows as we're seeing down here. Until you get to around the Alapahat, Statenville, that one ended the month in the above normal. Fargo kind of mirrored what we were seeing in our district on the Suwannee, beginning the month in kind of the higher, the above normal, and then ending in that greater than 90th percentile. So as I mentioned, keyword for the stream flow conditions for December is high. This is the current river flood forecast. I wanted to kind of mention this. With this system coming through, compounding with the rainfall that we've already gotten in December, we do have some gauges that are near flood stage at this point, and those are Worthington Springs, Worthington Springs, Fort White, and then we up at the White Springs gauge. These are all predicted to be near action stage or in action stage this coming week with the rain that we're getting. And the Withlacoochee at Panetta. Now we do have some that are looking to actually go into minor flood stage, and those include this is the Olino gauge, the Three Rivers Estates gauge, and then we have over the Osceola at Lamont. That Osceola at Lamont has been staged pretty high ever since Hurricane Idalia came through. So that one's still kind of hanging out in that minor flood stage. So we need to be kind of wary about some of the possibility of minor flooding with this system coming through today. All right, Upper Florida and aquifer levels. This is the end of November 2023. I showed this at the last board meeting. I wanted to kind of point out what we've got going on here, comparing with what we've got this month. So 25th to 75th percentile in most of our district. We did have some dry areas of 10th to 25th percentile down in lower Taylor, Dixie County, up in Columbia County as well, and Lafayette. They all showed some areas of 10th to 25th percentile. On the other end of that, we did see some areas of high, the above 90th percentile over in Jefferson, Taylor, and Lafayette. And then we had some 75th to 90th percentiles over stretching up into Madison, of course, Lafayette, over into Jefferson and Taylor as well. Fast forward 1 month, we have almost a completely different picture here. We have expanded our above 90th percentile to encompass areas of Dixie County, Lafayette, most of Taylor County, southern Jefferson, Madison County, even over into Hamilton, some over into Columbia County, kind of following the river right up here, the Suwannee River, South Columbia over into Alachua County, and then down into southern Gilchrist, all showed some above 90th percentiles in levels of their aquifer. On most counties showed some areas of 75th to 90th percentile. We're stretching that light blue color down in Dixie County, kind of enveloping pretty much everything in the center of the district, up in the northern part of the district as well. I did want to point out that the center part of the district and even over into the eastern part of the district, we're seeing 25th to 75th percentile, so we're still at the normal range as far as the well levels are concerned. This one area right here of low, this is an artifact. It's controlled by these two wells up here. This really should be a 25th to 75th percentile because there's no well controlling that. So we can kind of disregard that. But all in all, we're either at the normal, the high, or the above 90th percentile for well levels at the end of December. This is U.S. Drought Monitor. This was released on January 4th. This is this past Thursday. I wanted to point out, really, we don't have any issues with drought, as we've seen from the previous slides that I've shown. There are some issues over in Florida, of course, in the Panhandle. They do have some abnormally dry. Then down near the Tampa Bay area, they've got some extreme drought on top of severe drought, on top of moderate drought kind of thing. They've got a lot going on down there. But I would look for maybe some improvement if they get some high rainfall from this system coming through today. I did want to mention that we are still under an El Nino advisory, and that is expected to continue through the spring into possibly April. April to June, we're looking at about a 60% chance of switching over into an El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral condition. And I think for the last time I saw, I believe we may be looking at possibly a new La Nina for past the summer. So we'll keep an eye on that. But as of right now, the take-home message is we've got the El Nino sticking with us till at least through the spring and possibly early summer. With that said, though, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's seasonal outlook for January through March, we do have above normal rainfall probability, as we've seen from this past month's hydro report. Most of the South and pretty much all of Florida is going to see that above normal rainfall probability for the next 3 months for January through March. This is interesting too. I haven't ever mentioned that we are going to see near normal temperatures. That's kind of a first for me since I've done this presentation. But we are predicted to have near normal temperature probabilities for the next 3 months as well. So that would be good. Not too cold, not too hot, hopefully. And finally, our December 2023 summary, we had a rainfall amount of 8.3 inches. That's more than 2.5 times higher that district-wide average, or that long-term average of 3.2 inches. We had a district-wide rainfall surplus, and I did want to underline that because I haven't said that in a while, at the end of December of 4.6 inches, which is a much improvement on that deficit of 2.6 inches that we had at the end of November. District-wide upper Florida and aquifer levels rose quite a bit. We went from the 51st percentile at the end of November to the 77th percentile at the end of December. So that rainfall has definitely helped our aquifer quite a bit. And we did have a median level increase across all of our monitored wells in the district of about 2.1 feet. So that's quite a bit. El Nino conditions, as I mentioned, are going to continue through the winter and into the spring until we got about a 60% chance of El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions, from April through June 2024. And finally, no portions of the district are currently experiencing drought conditions, and I don't expect for that to change, especially with the rainfall that we're getting now. So that El Nino is kind of doing what it normally does in our area and kind of gives us quite a bit of rainfall, especially in the wintertime. So, Madam Chair, with that, I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Robert, Madam Chair. Robert, the river gauges, they're read manually, is that correct?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the river gauges, the ones, especially the ones I have on here, are all USGS gauges, and these are USGS gauges. So these are read, they're on the USGS website. They're normally, I think they come in hourly, but you can also get a daily mean. So it's, I think
they're reading them electronically then?
Yeah, correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was curious. I've seen the one at the Santa Fe River Bridge being read manually for years with a crank and all that stuff, so.
Yes, sir.
So that data is, if somebody questions their flood, where the flood level's at, and it's not just a prediction, it's the actual gauge amounts at that point then.
These here are, so these are, if I understand your question, these are based on daily statistics that the USGS puts together based on a long period of record. So on the 31st I try to do 30th, 31st each month, depending on when it ends. This is based on the above 90th percentile on that day. So yes, that is correct. They all the times that they read that, they'll take those records, put them together, and do some stats on them, and do like a box plot where it's the 10th percentile, 25th, 75th, 50th, things like that. And that's what these are here. That's what they're based on.
So back to the one where you had the flood levels being at or above flood stage or predicted. Is that a prediction based on, say, we get 5 inches of rain today? Is that a prediction based on that, or is that based on what's been hit the ground already as of now?
So you're correct. I guess the former. Yeah, so this is based on the National Weather Service. They have their own models, and they will model the rainfall for the area. And they use real-time data up to a certain point where it stops, and then they'll try to extend that out based on rainfall for, you know, the next day. Actually, I think this is 7 days, if I'm not mistaken. So, because this will go through the weekend. So these are actually all the way through Saturday, I think it was, when I pulled this data. So yeah, you were correct when you said that they actually do expand that data that they have using their models. And the rainfall is one of the components of that model. Yes, sir.
Having been a resident of North Florida for all my life, if your predictions for above normal rainfall continues through the spring, the river's gonna be pretty high for a while. if
Yes,
not
sir.
at flood stage.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And, we've had it happen before during these El Nino, I guess, winters. They'll be full, the soils will be saturated, and then we'll get a bunch of rain in the spring and set ourselves up for another flood. That unfortunately does happen. But as I mentioned earlier, I kind of prefer that than I would the drought, but that's just personal opinion.
Thank you, Rob.
Sure.
Can you, next month, can you give us a comparison for the winter of 98 and the spring of 98? Because we had a El Nino that year, if I recall correctly, and it was extremely wet like it is right now. And then we turned around and had some of the worst fire seasons that we've ever had in the spring, in the summer of that year. So if you can pull the records on that right there, and let's have a comparison, if you don't mind.
Madam Chair, are you looking for, I guess, flows?
Yeah,
flow comparisons?
flows and,
Okay.
and, you know, kind of rainfall data and drought monitors, if you have
Okay.
that data, I don't know.
I could show an interim slide right here. Madam Chair, if you're all right, I've got an extra slide that I did prepare.
For 98? Did you talk to him earlier?
No, I did not, but this is very interesting. We already.
That in his back pocket, man.
Pull that one right out.
Madam Chair, I actually put this together yesterday. I was thinking that way too. I was thinking, okay, so what are we setting ourselves up for? I just pulled the Ellaville gauge. This is data that lives in Hydra, so this is all our USGS data for the data source. But at the Ellaville gauge, these are the recent crests, the historic crests that we've had on there, basically the highs. And then some of the more recent crests here, I kind of copied that off of the National Weather Service, posted it in here. But what I did is I took beginning October of this year, and all of these are October, I just started them at the water year. And so I got a 1947, 1997, 2008, and 1972. Those were all the historic crests that we had at Ellaville. I just chose Ellaville because it's one that takes a lot of water, especially from the Withlacoochee, and it's prone to flooding. And so what we are kind of seeing at this point, and right here, we're actually below the 1997, 1998, and below the I believe it's 1940 or 2008. No, that's 1947, because 47 was the historic drought, historic flood. But we are actually above that 1972 and 2008. So we're kind of in the middle when it comes to river flows. A lot of these, though, if you look, we didn't start getting rainfall we didn't start getting higher flows until, late March, basically in the spring, and that's when we kind of saw some of these peaks. So we are kind of setting ourselves up to flood if it continues with the rain. But at this point, we're not at the highest we could be. Does that kind of
Yeah, what you can
answer?
see though, this what I'm kind of remembering is you can see that green line in March for 97, 98, and then it goes way down in June. You see where you're at, and that's that
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
historic
Yes, sir.
Father's
Yep.
Day fires and stuff that we had. I mean, it got dry quick.
It did.
Yeah, because
If
that's
I
one
may
of
offer comment on that, Mr. Richard, it did. In fact, in the spring of 98, when we had the flood on the Santa Fe, because Bradford County and all, they received some near record rainfall, and it flooded that Santa Fe basin. But after about April timeframe, it led into that drought of 2000, 2001, 2002.
And that was the summer. That was the summer that they closed the races down in Daytona because the east part of the state was on fire.
Oh, wow.
And that's also when it actually jumped 95.
Yeah,
The fire jumped
yeah, those
across
fires.
95.
I mean, it was bad. We had a lot of fire here. That wasn't Mallory swamp year, but it was the San Pedro Bay on the north side of 27 that burnt so bad that year too. I guess I'm aging myself maybe or something like that right there, but remember those old days, you know, but, the whole point of it is I know that we can go pretty quick, like from record
Floods.
flooding to pretty severe drought.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely can. Yeah, all it takes is maybe a switch in climate or something, and
Well, I think
it can happen.
Weatherman was praying from January to about April, and then the logger's prayer started being heard in April and all the way down through
Yeah, 'cause
the, you know, we were just, he knew that we just had just enough. You know, we
Yeah, it
had too
definitely
much.
takes
Yeah.
the flow here definitely takes a nosedive, that's for sure. Yes, sir. Does that answer your question? Or would you
Yeah,
like me to do
that's
some-
perfect.
Okay, great,
That's
great.
really good
Awesome.
data. Thank you.
Okay, yes,
Look at
yes, sir,
that.
no
The
problem.
man knows.
Right
He's starting to figure us out, guys. I mean, that could be dangerous.
I want to be prepared and answer any
Is there
questions.
anything else you want to predict today? Is your stock predicted?
I don't have anything else. I'll quit while I'm ahead at this
Just was
point.
just was curious.
Oh, goodness. Any other questions?
No.
Excellent report. Thank you,
Thank you very
sir.
much, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thank you.
It's from the bridge you want to tell them already.
Mr. Hugh, you want to take B and C for me?
Sure.
All righty.
Don't have any cooperating agencies today, Madam Chair. We did have a recognition for one of our staff, Stephanie Armstrong, scheduled. Unfortunately, she's sick today, so we'll postpone that until next month, a 5-year recognition for her. But I would like to ask Ben Glass to come up to the podium. As some of you or all of you may know, we try to make an effort here for succession planning. Steve Schroeder, who we're fortunate to have in audience today, along with his wife, Steve has decided he's going to retire, and it's somewhat ironic because we'll actually be recognizing him for 5 years of service next month. But he's scheduled to retire in March of this year. So in an effort to plan for that, we looked internally, and Ben Glass has expressed interest in some of the duties that Steve has performed for the district in his current role. I know the board knows of him relative to our facilities oversight, our surplus and acquisition and conservation easements, and then also oversight of our records management. And so he'll be working with Ben over the next few months to spin Ben up on those program areas. And then in order to replace Ben in Tallahassee, Ben will be working with our newest hire, Tyler Winburn. And I'll let Ben go through his biography and introduce Tyler. But we like what we see with Tyler. Yesterday was his first day. But he comes highly recommended, and I think he'll do a great job for the district with that. And he's a local Gator, which helps. And I can say that. My daughter's not online. And so, anyway, I'll let Ben introduce Tyler and go from there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Hugh.
Good morning, Madam Chair. So I'm
Morning,
happy
Dan.
this morning to introduce Tyler Winburn to you all. He graduated from the University of Florida, where he earned both a law degree and a master's in agribusiness. Tyler's undergraduate degree specialized in environmental economics and policy. He has spent time as both a science and ag teacher and a practicing attorney. He serves as an adjunct instructor of business law at North Florida College and is a member of the local Kiwanis Club, First Baptist Church of Live Oak. He loves spending time outside, playing golf, enjoying nature, and working with his cows. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, Hugh said that he did a really good job on his first day, but typically I normally give my people about 2 weeks before they start showing out. So you're not off the hook just yet, okay?
Keep it up.
All right. But we'll be keeping close eye on you.
Good.
Welcome aboard. Glad you're here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I understand you guys are headed to Tallahassee?
We're going to head to watch the Governor's State of the State
Okay.
address. We're going to do it remote from here because of the weather, but we're going to watch his State of the State address and the Speaker of the House and Senate President's addresses.
Good deal.
Excellent.
Well, welcome aboard. That
Thank you.
is
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yep.
Ben, would you like to speak about what's on the agenda there for tomorrow on the environmental? While you're at the podium anyway, I was gonna do it later, but.
Sure. So two of our board members are agendaed for their first committee hearing for confirmation. Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Schwab are both up for confirmation this year, and they're on the agenda for the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, which is the first committee stop. Your all's attendance has not been requested, so no issues anticipated.
Well, just in case, I can go now if I need
Well,
to.
we'll be there just in case.
Okay,
too.
you got my back. Okay, that's good. All right.
So I will be in Tallahassee tomorrow for that, but that will set you all up to be heard in ethics and elections, which will be your last committee stop before being heard on the Senate floor.
Awesome. Sounds good. We need to keep them.
We're working on it.
Thank you, Ben. All righty. Let's see here. Well,
Oh,
we
and I
need-
want to say personally,
Oh, yes.
congratulations on your retirement announcement, Steve. It's always nice to know quitters. And congratulations. We wish you well on your fixed income endeavors there.
oh dear. Yeah, always have to count on Richard, right? I think we all look forward to that day that we can retire. My light is not at the end of the tunnel yet, but I'm glad yours is. You're gonna have some time to do what you want to do.
Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Tom, do you have anything for us today?
No, just one thing, at the last, the December meeting, the board voted to issue the final order on Florida Springs Council versus Seven Springs. That final order was issued December 12. If anyone is dissatisfied with that order, they have 30 days to appeal. That appeal period runs on Thursday of this week. So of course, I'll let everybody know by email if anyone appeals it. But other than that, I don't have anything unless there are questions of me.
Okay. Any questions for Tom? Not today? All right, we'll move on. Good morning, Mr. Tim.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Always good to see you. I want to start on saying on behalf of staff and myself, thank to you and Director Thomas for the days off during the holidays. It was great to be able to spend time with family. But with that said, we look forward to making 2024 a great year. For business and community services, you'll find items number 9 through 14 on this morning's agenda. Items number 10 and 13 are information items. Items number 12 and 14 were approved by way of the consent agenda. So with that, I'm very pleased that Mr. Schroeder is able to be with us here this morning. He will be covering items number 9 with a facilities update, and then he'll also present item number 11 for your consideration. And then later today, we have a finance workshop. Schroeder?
Sounds good.
Well, I was teasing my staff that they should have gotten me a motorized one, but, you know.
There you go. That would have been good.
That would have
You're
been
retiring,
perfect.
Steve.
Well, that's right. Why go through the expense being that you're going to quit in a few weeks?
Exactly. Right. Thank you, Mr. Schwab. I appreciate being known as a quitter.
Yes,
I'm sorry. Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning, Happy New Year. It is good to be here. Just on a personal note, I am on the road to recovery. I'm hoping to be back driving and back in the office within the next 2 weeks. My wife is getting tired of being my chauffeur and personal assistant, but we're working our way through it. This morning, having worked with Kelly Landis, who is our Fleet Facilities and Asset Specialist, we put together a very brief PowerPoint for you to kind of update you on where we are on some facilities projects. Talk about a couple of items, first being current projects, things that we have ongoing at this time. I know you may have noticed when you came in, the lobby, and we want to talk about the completed berm project. Right now, we have going on the lobby wall renovation. You may recall we had some water leaking in out there. Carpet was getting ruined, and that's brand-new carpet, not good. So we reached out to Gateway, and I have that project underway. We'll talk some more detail about that. Replacing an old HVAC unit, going to work on parking lot restriping, and field services, the old lab building renovation. The lobby wall renovation, you see the work commenced in December. Unfortunately, it took a long time because of Idalia for us to get permits in place with that. So we've extended the task work assignment for Gateway, and hopefully they will complete this project by April of '24. Just to give you an idea of what it will look like, this is the outside. If you can see the front. Currently, the windows go all the way across. Here we will have siding, 2 windows in the middle, and they're going to match the current curvature here. Now, interior will not be curved the same, it will be a wall. So they'll be squared off as opposed to being round corners. But it will be a little more attractive and hopefully a little less water intrusive than what we had previously. This is what they found when they started deconstructing out there. We had taken several measures to try to reduce the water intrusion. If you recall, we had some flashing put up there, we had some siding put up, tar and feathers and whatever else we could think of. The old days in the Coast Guard, we called it spitballs and duct tape. Those work only so far. So they've gotten this down to the point where they've done the demolition and they've started the construction, and they're going to, as best they can, blend this into the current building, but they will be using new hardy board siding versus the old siding. The HV replacement, we are replacing a air handler and condensing unit in the resource management hallway. We ordered the unit in November, and the way we're doing this, we can no longer direct purchase from a manufacturer AC equipment. We have a contract with Peak Power, who does all of our AC service throughout the headquarters. We get a quote from them for a unit, and we go out and quote through other contractors or through manufacturers directly. We purchase the least expensive item through Peak. They can buy it, so we direct buy through them. So we're buying the equipment at the best price we can find, using them to direct purchase, and then we pay them for the installation. We estimate that this will be installed in January of '24. You see the blue dots? These are the offices served by this particular unit. That's the condenser unit, that is the air handler. This system has given us problems for quite a while. Just so you're aware, it's a 2005 air handler and a 2003 condensing unit. And they are both on their last legs. The air handler, we've replaced the pan under that, had repairs done to it, and it just constantly is leaking. This is the unit that's being replaced here. Our handyman, by the way, poured a new slab because the unit going in is actually going to be able to have a larger footprint. But when we match, we have found, this is amazing, when you match the air handler and the condenser, so they're the same year, the same size, they last a whole lot longer and they're way more efficient. The one that we're replacing, when it turns on, sounds like the train going across here. And this is an example of the leak. It's kind of hard, but this is one of the concave mirrors, so you can see people coming down the hallway. This is just one of the leaks that have occurred. We've replaced that ceiling tile and ceiling tiles in that area probably 20 times. So it's just a constant battle. We can get that fixed, problem solved. We're working on parking lot restriping, particularly in the front where we have more guests and such coming in. We have obtained quotes and we are working on those. That's going to cost sub $2,000 to have them restriped, cleaned. And our handyman has submitted a quote. Part of the quote is he wants to pressure wash while we're out and then immediately go in and paint, but it's going to depend on the weather. And finally, you can see, I don't need to show you the parking lot, you know how faded those lines are out there. And the general poor condition. So hopefully we can make that look a little brighter and cheerier. Finally, the field services building, the old lab building, you approved us to enter into negotiations with Gateway Contracting for renovations of that. They have developed some floor plans. We are currently negotiating the price. I'm going to thank Vince Robinson, I don't know if he's here, for helping us on that, as well as Kelly. So we are currently in price negotiations on that, and hope to get that started very soon. They have begun the design process. This is a rough outline, thanks to Kelly Landis for drawing this out after working with Gateway, as to how that building is going to look from an overall viewpoint once we have completed. And finally, the berm project. I know you all love that project. I am so happy we got it completed. Just wanted to show you, this is what it looked like in the front before we did this. As a result of this, as I mentioned to you when we were doing the project, all over here, we were having water intrusion into offices. We had water seeping under the walls, through the walls, down the walls. Luckily, we didn't have any on this side, but it's just a matter of time, or we haven't found it. This is what it looks like now. It looks a little cleaner, neater. We don't have a water intrusion problem anymore. And I want to compliment Gateway. They not only did clearing out the dirt, clearing out the trees, you saw those videos of all that work they did, but they also, beyond the scope of their work within their contract, scraped, literally burned all that membrane off those walls, sealed and painted. So beyond their scope. Again, this is the back, the berms, and as you recall, we have Warren Spring over here. We also had some water intrusion along these walls, and this is how it looks now. And so far, it appears the drainage is working. So
We'll know today, won't we?
we will know today. Luckily, I will be home and I will be getting phone calls telling me how badly it's flooded, but
Have you quit already?
no, sir, I am
Okay.
working. I am working.
Oh,
on-
working from home, okay.
I'm working
okay,
from
okay.
home, yes.
No problem.
But I do want to tell you, these walls, when they got this stripped out, there is a combination of material used. On the front side, on one side, they heard, and I know some of you are in construction, so you know what derby gum is, which is basically where they heat roll roofing as they lay it on, and it melts into the surface. They had used derby gum, they had used rolled roofing, they had used tar paper, they had used rolled-on tar, any number of products to seal those walls, all of which were failing. And Gateway literally had to get out the blowtorch and burn and scrape all of that down to the bare concrete. And then they went in and did the sealing. So it was a great deal of work to get that accomplished, but they did a really, really good job. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll take any questions.
Steve, what was the philosophy when they originally built the building to put that dirt on there? Was that like to keep it cool and heated too, or what was the idea behind that? Were you here then? I know that, you're getting ready to retire and all.
I was not here then,
Oh, you
Mr.
weren't here,
Croft.
okay, all right.
However, Madam Chair, I did have the opportunity, purely coincidental, to meet with someone who was involved in the engineering and design of this building. He came to see me about a piece of property. And as we were sitting outside, it was during COVID, so we met out on the ramp out there. He looked at the berms and he goes, I can't believe they did that. I said, why did they do that? Purely aesthetics.
Oh, aesthetics. Wow.
He said there was zero architectural reasons for doing it. He said there was that green thing that, if you build this dirt up, it insulates the building. He said, and I told him I didn't think that was a good idea. They imported the dirt to do that. So, imported meaning they brought it in from another location. So the answer, I think, is quite simple. It was just looks.
Wow, okay.
And I know there is a house down on 51
Yeah.
that has the same berm issue. And I spoke to a realtor who told me they have that same issue.
Leaking.
of water intrusion.
Yeah, wow.
So,
Interesting.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Steve, first of all, congratulations on your retirement and thank you for your service to the district.
thank you.
On the restriping of the parking lot, when's the last time it was was it sealed? I mean, has it been looked at or?
I'm not sure when it was last sealed. If it was before my time. We can certainly look and find out. I know in the 2016 building report, it was noted that they at least need to repaint the lines. And I think as part of the overall exterior renovation project that will be ongoing, there will be resealing and repaving of the parking lots will be a part of that project. I think in the interim, we at least need to get the parking lots so the spaces are visible. At this point, where people often are guessing where they can park and where they can't.
Yeah, well, it's just my experience that once it gets to a certain point, if it's not resealed, you're gonna be repaving pretty quick, so. That's all.
Yes.
My only comment. Thank you, Steve.
Steve, one question. On the wall reconstruction, just seems odd. Why 3 months to complete it?
That's the demolition through
I mean,
reconstruction.
We're past all that.
What-
Well, I'm looking at what we got right now, and we're 3 months away from being finished. Why?
Madam Chair, that's their outside. That's the date to completion. I think they'll be completed before that, in all honesty.
I just wondered, is it parts, or
Well, we-
waiting on something to come in?
We try to give them room to be able to get the work done, knowing that in between, for example, with working here in the lobby, they can't work on board days. There are certain other days where they can't work. We had the holiday period built in here as well. And on this one, it was particularly getting permits in place was the difficulty. And we also have the issue, when we did the fire escape out here for Tyler's room, getting inspections done. City of Live Oak is running way behind on inspections and on getting permits issued. However, I suspect that
We're caught up now with the
catching up. I know you were holding emergency meetings almost weekly just to talk about that issue, if I recall.
We're caught up now with all permits.
Suwannee County, I'm sorry. But I think, we're getting there. Yeah, I don't think this will take till April. I mean, I haven't had a chance to really inspect their progress at this point. But Kelly? Your thoughts?
6-8 weeks is really.
Madam Chair, if I may add, I
Yes, he-
have spoken with the contractor as well, Mr. Charles, and they don't think that it will take the full time period of the extension that was done on it. And they have made significant progress over the last 3 weeks on where it was at. And part of it was, like I said, what they were doing was relative to weather dependent. And also the holidays interfering with some of that as well. But they're pretty driven to get it done and wrap this job up. So I don't envision that it would take that long to get them. Yeah, I'm with you on it, and that was the conversation that I had with them on it.
And that's pretty much their contract time. That's not really their work time. I
Right,
mean, it's
that's
their
correct.
contract time.
Yes, ma'am. And as I said, there are days built where they cannot do work.
Right.
When we have board meetings and other functions that may be occurring in here, they can't work out there. Of course, weather is also a driving factor.
Right.
But I suspect they'll be done before that. They've been pretty prompt. The berm project they completed, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks ahead of schedule with the additional work. Plenty of faith in those guys.
I have one little question.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
just looking up there, there's the little triangle pieces of the wall that are still in place. Are they gonna go ahead and replace those as they're rotted down in where they touch the roof? I don't know whether we can see it or not. while they're there and they're gonna put hardy board in, they really need to make it all match anyway. Yeah, it's kind of covered up, but it's where, okay. let's
In
see
here?
Yes, up, and, yeah, and it.
I
and it's
believe
like a
all
little-
of this is going to be replaced.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. They're going to, this whole, all the way across here will be new hardy board.
okay,
I just think they haven't torn that out yet because behind there is not necessarily bad.
okay. Good deal. All right, any other questions? Nope.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming today. I know it was a lot of effort. You feeling better?
Hi, yes, ma'am.
Good.
Getting there. I have one other item, and that is the Waldo Tree Farm. I apologize, I don't know the item number. Waldo Tree Farm final resolution. Staff recommendation that you you adopt Resolution 24-01 for the final acquisition of Waldo Tree Farm tract in Alachua County for an amount not to exceed $45,000. You had previously approved the acquisition of the Waldo Tree Farm in Alachua County and authorized the executive director to enter into a contract to acquire the parcel for an amount not to exceed $35,200. Satisfactory Phase 1 environmental assessment has been received, and it was clear, did not recommend a Phase 2 or find any environmental issues. Expenses incurred in the due diligence phase, which include the appraisal and the Phase 1 environmental, are $1,925 for the appraisal, $5,012 for the Phase 1 assessment, and we expect minimal closing expenses. Staff recommends the board adopt a resolution 2024-01 authorizing the acquisition of the property using PCS mitigation Save Our Rivers funds for all costs associated with the acquisition. We're asking for approval of up to $45,000, but we, given due diligence, we don't expect it to be more. This is the property outlined in white right here. It is 44.5 acres. If you'll recall, several years ago, we were offered property east and west of the railroad. We declined that offer based on inaccessibility and no benefit to the district. By buying this piece, we close up our, I believe that's Waldo, Lake Waldo, Lake Alto. We close up this tract, I can't read that, I'm sorry. And basically we'll own up to the railroad tracks. The property to the north is owned by Rayonier. It is forest land. This will be used, passively managed by the district. With that, Madam Chair, I'd move the recommendation.
Is there a recommendation?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Steve, I got one question before you, Madam Chair, before you leave. In the case where we're requesting $45,000 from PCS mitigation fund, and they authorize that, and they fund the district for the $45,000, and then our closing, once we get the deal all settled, it ends up being $38,200. Just curious, is that money go back to the fund, or is that money then that comes to the district and is used for other purposes?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thompson, the PCS Save Our Rivers money is local funds, is held within our coffers. By what we are requesting is for the board to authorize staff to expend those funds. So if we expend the 45, we spend 45. If we spend 38, we spend 38. It's essentially just local funds, so there's no place for it to go back to. The money just remains where it is. Just, we request a buffer so we don't go over if we can avoid it. And in most cases, that works. So, and I think you might be thinking of Florida Forever or some of those funds we request from the state. Right. This is local funds that we received several years ago as part of a mitigation plan. And over the years, the restrictions on the expenditures were released, and we were basically told you can buy whatever you want with it. So we're trying.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. We're
And I
gonna
want
take
you
a-
all to know I'm not retiring from 5 years at the district. A few more years under my belt, so, but
Congratulations.
thank you. And in March, I hope to say a few words.
I hope you feel better.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Schroeder, for helping him.
Yes, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I just want to say I appreciate Steve making the effort to be
Oh,
with
my
us and his
goodness,
wife
yes.
driving him here today.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
That-
much.
That concludes our item.
Thank you. We're going to take about a 15-minute break, and then we'll be back and move forward with our next agenda item. All right, we're going to call our meeting back to order, and we're moving on to our next items.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have several items for your consideration today. The first is the introduction of our new employee in the Office of Hydrologic Data Services, Kevin Posada. So we hired Kevin straight out of high school. He is also enrolled at North Florida Community College as well. But Kevin hails from Lafayette County, where he worked most recently as a swine technician for Lyons Show Pigs. And then he also worked for Hendrick Hay and Cattle in Mayo, Florida for 3 years while he was also in high school. So Kevin was a member of the Beta Club and the FFA and is also a scholarship recipient. So he works, like I mentioned, in our Office of Hydrologic Data Collection Services as a Hydrologic Data Collection Services Specialist, where he gathers hydrologic and agricultural data and helps feed. Mr. Larry, you were asking earlier about the river levels and whether those are real-time or manually read. The answer is both. We have a real-time river levels page that's available to the public and used wisely, and the data that Kevin and his team under Vince's leadership work on, they help support that data. This is really critical for people during high water events. So with that, we're happy to welcome Kevin to the district and look forward to a long career with him in our office.
That is wonderful. Kevin, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
It sounds like your work ethic is something that is exemplary, and we're glad to have you here.
Thank y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Kevin. All right, we will move on to the items in outreach and operations. And actually, before I do that, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, Mr. Schwab was talking about the fires of 1998 and dating himself. I'll date myself. I remember I was young at that time, younger, and remember having to meet a helicopter to come. My dad was incident commander. He worked for the Florida, it was Division of Forestry at that time, and was incident commander on several of the incidents that were going on in 1998, and having to meet him. And Terry Rhodes was the interim commissioner of agriculture at the time, and she was there on scene in Lake City, and helicopter came down to come pick up my dad up, and very near our house, because he was at home plowing lines around our house in preparation of the fires that were up in San Pedro Bay, because we live up nearer to there. So I remember that very vividly. And then they gave all the first responders access to go to Disney World. So that was exciting. That was my first and only time. My parents took me to Disney World. So
That was an awful period. It was.
yes, very scary.
Yes.
To see that. All right, so we have 5 items for your consideration in the Division of Outreach and Operations. Item number 15 and 16 are for informational purposes. Items number 17 and 18 will be presented by Bill McKinstry, our Chief of Land Management. And item number 19 is for informational purposes. And with that, I'll welcome Bill up to the front.
Thank you.
Madam
morning,
Chair,
Bill.
members of the governing board.
Good morning.
Item 17, good morning. My first item, this is a amendment to an agreement with the Florida Department of Military Affairs. Back in 2015, the Water Management District entered into a corporate management agreement with DMA to manage some recently purchased properties that bordered Camp Blanding. Both the district and DMA found needed amendments to the existing agreement. Some of those amendments were clerical edits, clarification of each party's responsibilities, and probably the most significant one was financial details as it relates to potential revenues. Currently, all timber revenue, or really any revenue that DMA makes off those properties, those funds have to go back to those two particular tracks. However, DMA contacted me and said, due to budget issues, we can't accept anything over, we can't really bring in and put into our coffers anything over $450,000. And so I said, what does that mean? And they proceeded to tell me they're gonna give us money. I said, really?
That's a bad problem.
Yeah, I don't know how many times this happens in the state of Florida between two agencies with nothing, nothing to do for it. But anyhow, the updated language provides that any residual revenues from the timber resource management over $450,000 will be credited to the district's land management trust fund and can be used for other district land management activities district-wide. The agreement is set to expire in 2040. There are no previous amendments or renewals to the agreement. This first amendment to the corporate management agreement has been reviewed and approved by a legal counsel for both parties. So our recommendation is to approve the first amendment to the corporate management agreement with the Florida Department of Military Affairs for the management of Double Run Creek and West Ridge Water Resource Development Area tracks at the Camp Blanding Joint Training Center Cooperative.
Thank you.
Any
Any
questions?
questions? Yep.
A question, Bill. Management practices out there, have they been up to standard? Are we getting everything done and still having a surplus of money?
So those two particular tracks, they were purchased actually using DMA funds as what they call buffers. I'm sure some of you'll kind of remember that, Blanding buffers. And they are actually sitting and waiting for things to happen outside of the control of really either this district or Camp Blanding. Like the West Ridge tract, they're going to be doing reclamation out there. So until the reclamation fully, is completed, we're not going to spend a bunch of funds and then all of a sudden the reclamation process, does away with like tree plantings and things like that. So we're kind of, and same thing, Double Run Creek, that's where this all arose from. That's a 2,000 acre tract we have over there. That's the one in the map, that's the bottom one. And essentially right now, Chemours is mining straight down from north to south. And their plans are to mine about 3/4 of that tract. So again, that's why nothing has really happened management wise out there because, we don't really want the public out there yet because all this stuff is going on. So once the reclamation's done, once, our project engineers and Chemours project engineers come together with, their water resource development plans, that's what both those tracks are for, to help with flood concerns and different things in that area. They're kind of just sitting and waiting.
So they've already harvested enough to their 450
Yes, sir.
level, and now we're dealing with this.
Yes, sir. We're expected to receive our first check probably next week.
I'd make that motion to proceed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. The opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Bill, Madam Chair? Bill, one question on that. So that track that was highlighted, the bigger track, the 2,000 acre track, it's already been permitted for Chemours to mine there?
Yes, sir.
So the mining revenue subject to that would also be anything in excess of what, $450,000 they would?
No, I'm not aware of what those dealings were, in terms of how that, obviously Chemours that's their money.
Yeah.
That's, they kept the mineral rights.
Okay.
So, they're actually, and frankly, Camp Blanding, they're actually hustling and doing a good job of it because Chemours basically says, hey, this is the block we're mining next. You want those timber, you got to get out there and get it done. And they give them this, set amount of time before they bring their equipment in and start mining.
That was my question. The mineral rights has already been.
Yeah, the mineral rights are
good. Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, the $450,000 in excess didn't come off those two blue tracks, it actually came off of Camp Blanding itself?
No, off that bottom blue track called
Off
Double
that
Run
bottom blue
Creek.
track, okay, Temple.
Do you have any idea how much excess over the 450 there might be coming to?
Well, I reached out to Camp Blanding. They gave me, for for the current 128 acres they're harvesting, they expect $300,000. Then I responded yesterday back to them. I said, what about, I don't, you know, there's timber all over that track. I said, what about the rest of the track? And I never heard back from them. So I'm not too sure if they are quite aware of where they're moving. And of course, you know, price fluctuate in timber all the time. So I don't know if they're completely aware of the full scope of, you know, what's happening in terms of what Chemours just basically says, here's a map, here's where we're going next year, type deal.
Yes.
Do you think it'd behoove us to set up a meeting with you and Camp Blanding, just to see, since we're on a tight timeline here, what we can salvage before they start mining?
I'm sorry.
I would imagine they're subbing that out. They're having cutters come in and.
Oh, yeah, yes, sir.
harvest.
So the base, yeah, so that's basically it. I mean, the basic Chemours says we're mining this area, Camp Bama goes out, gets bids, and then highest bidder, they get to work.
Possibly a personal trip to see what's left that we might be losing.
Sure.
And see if Camp Blanding can manage to get some more bids in on that, since we're on a tight time frame, instead of phone call and maybe have a meeting out there.
Sure.
And see exactly what they're thinking and.
Sure. I actually had the opportunity a number of months ago to go out there where they first started the mining process and rode around with them to see, you know, kind of what was going on. And that was part of that 128 acres they're harvesting now. We didn't go clear down through the entire 2,000 acres to look at everything, but sure, we can meet up with them and try to get some better idea of the
I just hate to
future.
leave some money on the table if it's there.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm not sure I follow Mr. Charles on as far as leaving money on the table, because the way Chemours has for the acreage there, they've got a set plan out. They're mining it in phases. And so as I understand it, they're in contact with Camp Blanding and coordination and with us as well. And so they designate where they're going to be moving their next mining. They actually have a mobile mining operation. They're utilizing some newer equipment. And, you know, with that, they've got I'm not going to say it's an open house. They've actually got an agency meeting coming up. I believe it's in March, out over on the site. And I'd be glad to share that date with you if you have interest in going over and looking at that. But
What Bill said about, they said, we're coming, if you want it, better get it. Gives
Well,
me the
that's-
sense there's an urgency, and maybe we need to have a plan that stays a step ahead of Chemours.
Right. And I think that's the reason that Chemours has developed this phased approach. So they give Camp Blanding time to come in and get the timber scheduled for harvest, and then it come in and cut before they move into the next phase.
My point is,
We won't
Camp
leave it, right.
Blanding may not feel the urgency as much as we do, and maybe we need a meeting.
They do, though. They have a very active timber harvesting program over there. And they know where the next Chemours project is, and they harvest all the timber before they get in there. They're not leaving anything on the table.
No, they're clear
They are
cutting.
making it happen. Yeah.
They're clear cutting as they
Yeah.
move through.
Good.
And the process that Chemours is utilizing now is as they move through an area, they actually have a reclamation process that comes in right behind them and follows. So it's not 10 years down the road before they go back to try to reclaim and do the restoration of that property. So they're moving in behind them.
That's good. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way, because then you don't have volunteer trees and things grow up and, you have to clean it up.
There's a number of benefits associated with that. We met with them on looking at the environmental aspect of it, and then also the actual water use from the mining. It utilizes less water with that type of process.
When they do the reclamation, do they bring and I haven't been out there, I know that there are lakes and ponds and stuff left, but when they do the reclamation, are they gonna bring the dirt back to its original elevation and plant trees? How do they, what is it?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have no idea.
Okay, good.
I-
That was just a question. I didn't know what the reclamation was gonna look like.
They do have a pre-approved plan, Madam Chair, that DEP from a permitting aspect, and because we own the land, we were part of that permitting process as well. ongoing.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think there's others at our district that can tell you a lot more about the reclamation than.
Amy is our resident expert with. I'm trying to spare you, Amy.
Amy's not here right now.
Amy has left building. Okay.
No, that's great. The permit holder is DEP Mining, does the permitting. And then we were engaged initially when they sent the permit through because we own the land. So we will ultimately take ownership and control of whatever is reclaimed on that site and released through the process.
Madam Chair, on a separate, several of the board members, I don't know if everybody that's on the board was here when Chemours came over, and this goes back to when Pat Webster was still at the district. They actually came over on the West Ridge property and relative to some of the reclamation efforts that were there. And we're currently in the process of the agreement that we signed on that piece of property, which, it's not, yeah, is that the blue that's up top?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On that piece of property that we essentially, the board approved the reclamation process associated with that. Chemours is in the time frame right now of where they've done some of the reclamation work there and they're managing for that. There has to be a success rate and with the management of the restoration associated with that. And then because we own that land, we will take ownership of it at that point. Sorry, Bill. Didn't mean to get offline.
No, that's good. Thank you. Any other questions for Bill?
One other question, is there any restriction on the funds we'll be getting as far as how they can be spent?
Madam Chair, no, sir. They will just go into our land management trust fund, just like our timber sale revenues do, and we can, I guess, spend it however the governing board sees fit.
Okay.
We'll spend it the same way our timber sales. we can
Timber
spend. You-
revenue
you
is
couldn't-
Right.
Oh, land management.
You couldn't do other stuff.
Restricted
Yeah.
in
That's
that
what I'm
regard.
saying.
Okay, that's good news.
All right. All right, if there's no more questions, we'll go on to item 18. And this is something I stand at this podium every January governing board meeting and present to you.
Bill, can I interrupt you? Robin, was there a vote on that item?
Yes, we have a motion and a second, yes, sir.
Okay. Not a full vote, though.
Do we have,
Let's go ahead and we have a motion and a second, let's go ahead and do the full vote.
okay, all right. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I was sitting here thinking,
Thank
did we
counsel,
vote
he was
on
listening
that?
more keenly than me.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so this item is our land management annual report that we produce every year. This annual report is an overview of management activities conducted on all the fee simple title lands held by the governing board. The report is used by the district during the land management review team process and is incorporated into the district's Florida Forever work plan and strategic annual update. The report summarizes the goals, objectives, strategies of the approved district land management plan and generally follows its organizational format. The bullet points are just some activities we did last fiscal year that I cherry-picked out of the annual report. This is only a very small fraction of what we did last year, but you know, some of the things I'm particularly proud of. We completed two basic recreation improvement projects along the Acilla River on a couple of the tracks. These projects will reduce, if not eliminate, some serious riverbank erosion we had going on, and also improve the access to the river. We also had a goal of 10,280 acres of prescribed fire, mechanical, and chemical treatments. We got 9,766 acres of that completed. Also, of our 20 timber sales that were completed last fiscal year, we had a result of about $2.5 million in revenue. Down towards the bottom, last couple of bullet points. Our land management staff, namely Scott Greger and our former staff, Ryan Sims, they managed to pull together $260 or over $268,000 worth of grants to help us reforest and do vegetative management on our district lands. And likewise, they also, through a partnership with FWC, we completed invasive plant treatments on the Lake Rowell tract, which was valued at $15,493. This fiscal year 2022-2023 land management annual report is always available on our website, so everybody in the world can review it. So our recommendation is to accept the 2022-2023 land management annual report.
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, that concludes our items.
Okay. Now you're on the hot seat, Dr. Brown.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Water Resources has 2 items this time. Just a brief update from me, and then item number 21 is for informational purposes. It's the Environmental Projects Monthly Report. Just in terms of what we have going on in the background, there are 2 project initiatives going on right now. The first one, the North Florida Regional Water Supply Planning Concepts Working Group, which has a very long acronym, is the St. John's District engaging with their large utilities on the East Coast. They are doing a concerted effort to investigate regional projects that would benefit the planning region as a whole, which would include our district. So they are engaged in a regional planning effort that we as a district are a part of, and will be participating in that working group to identify regional projects. In addition, we have Leroy Marshall today presenting to the North Florida Utility Advisory Group. That is our North Florida utilities who are looking to share resources and investigate regionalization in this district. That's a very exciting prospect, and he will be discussing the regional projects that he's working on now and talk to them about how they might contribute more projects of a regional nature, above and beyond the local projects that we've been supporting for our utilities, looking at them participating in regional projects. So that meeting is going on right now. There was also noticing yesterday for a public workshop for the Western Water Supply Plan. So the board approved the North Florida Regional Water Supply Plan in December of last year. We anticipate bringing the Western Water Supply Plan, which would be the first water supply plan for the western portion of our district, forward to the board. There'll be a public workshop on January 17th, and then there'll be a workshop for the board sharing the same information plus whatever feedback we've gotten from the public. That'll be at the February board meeting. And then assuming that things are looking favorable, we would be moving that forward for consideration for approval after that time. In addition, we have an exciting workshop coming up today on the SWIM plan. That's the Surface Water Management and Improvement Plan. Susie Hetrick will be giving that after the board meeting today. Happy to take any questions.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Uh-huh.
This might be a Leroy question,
Oh,
so forgive me if I'm asking you something. The agricultural and environmental grant projects, the grant amounts, is that a cumulative total over a period of time, or is that within this fiscal year?
It's a 6-month window that's incrementing
6-month window.
forward each month to look
Okay,
back.
but the numbers then are cumulative to what time frame?
So looking back, it's everything that we have active that's within that's open, looking back the 6-month timeframe, and then incrementing forward each month, you'd look back. I can look at that specific question, there's a
Yeah,
specific
well,
question.
if you look at the WR2 page is the recap of the environmental projects that are currently ongoing. I was just curious about the grant amount provided and what timeline that's in. Is it in this fiscal year, or is it?
Oh, for how much time we have to spend the grant, is that?
Yeah, exactly, I guess. Is there money in there was granted 2-3 years ago, but just hadn't been expended yet?
Correct, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Some contracts have a longer duration in some cases because some of the practices that get cost shared on take time to implement, or some of them are annual updates that get contracted all at once. So there might be a 5-year contract that has work practice done each year to improve the agricultural practices.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I thought that was the case, but I just want to make sure.
Madam Chair, Mr. Thompson, if you look at the environmental projects program, the active contracts, that's a cumulative amount of $30 million that's listed in there of those contracts that we are under contract with right now.
Right, you got active contracts or completed in the last 6 months, so that number's 32. But then the AEP funding sources number of grants is 107. So that's where I was trying to rationalize in my mind how far back that rolling number accumulated to. That's all, Dr. Brown. Thank you for your comments.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, thank you.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and Governing Board.
Good morning.
I will be brief. Ben already mentioned about Mr. Schwab and Mr. Lloyd for confirmation by the Environmental Natural Resources Committee tomorrow, being recommended for confirmation on that. One of the things that's coming up in February, I wanted to make the board, I think I mentioned it last month, but we do have, we're going to be having a workshop presentation with the University of Florida IFAS extension. I've not decided, or I'm not sure yet who will be doing the presentation. It'll probably either be Bob Hockmuth from the Research Center or Mark Warren, who is the extension agent out of Levy County. But one or the other, or they may have both of them here. And they'll be presenting on the control release fertilizer technology that we had a project in partnership with the Department of Agriculture last year for ag producers relative to producers that were growing corn and then also watermelons. So they'll be presenting that information next month with it. And I think it's very good. I saw the presentation last month. They did a workshop down in Phoenix Springs, and I attended it, and it's good information. And it just goes to show it's one more tool in the toolbox. It's not for all producers, but I do think that it has benefits where it's implemented properly along with irrigation management. And that's what the numbers show overall. And Bob, I'm sure will speak to this, or Mark, is that it does come down to irrigation management is what's critical in reducing the potential for that leaching to occur. Doesn't matter what type of fertilizer that you're using with it. So that's challenging. And for our producers, as you all know, weather like this makes it a bit more challenging because we can't control the rainfall. And so making sure that the fertilizer is sufficient, the irrigation is sufficient for that time period that the crop's growing, and managing that with our rainfall, spring and summertime rainfalls. So I think it'll be a good presentation with it. We do have two workshops today. One of them is Pam will be presenting along with some attendees from the Florida First Federal, and then another attendee relative to our investment planning with the board, looking for input from the board on it. And then with that, she would be preparing a recommendation to bring back to the board if the time frame suits the board for next month. For consideration with it. And then Amy mentioned our swim plan workshop presentation that Susie will be doing with it. And I think that's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right.
Questions from the board?
Questions for Hugh today? None.
Okay.
Okay. Are the folks here already for the presentation?
I'm told that they
Pam?
are, yes.
They are here.
If we want to take a short break, we can get them lined up. I think they're over Pam's office,
Okay.
awaiting time to come
Will
over for the
11
presentation.
o'clock be a 10-minute break? Is that long enough?
I think that should be suitable, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, we'll come back for our workshop then at 11. Is there a motion to adjourn our board meeting?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Have a motion, a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, motion carried. Thank
Thank
you, Hugh. Okay, we will open our governing board workshop. And our first item then, Ms. Pam is going to
Yes, ma'am. If I may make a few comments, Madam Chair.
Maybe, I don't know, Hugh.
I know y'all would rather listen to Pam. I get it, I would too, believe it. But no, we wanted to put this together. I know that we've had some various discussions with individually with board members, and about looking at what we could do from an investment perspective with our reserve funds with there. And so we tasked Pam to try to pull this information together. We were actually able to meet with our depository earlier last year or mid-year and look at a program that they had, and then we pulled some additional information together since that time. And so I think it's timely now for us to do a workshop for the board. And while the board won't be voting on anything today, but certainly give us some inclination as to what direction do you want staff to go to or go towards with an investment strategy moving forward. It's something that we have needed here at the district. I remember several years ago when Mr. Richard was treasurer and I was first director here. We had some discussions with Pam whenever he was becoming oriented as treasurer about looking to do some investments with the board's reserves. So I think it's timely that we can look at that now. And then maybe next month the board will be able to take a vote on our direction going forward.
All right, that sounds good.
Oh,
Thank
yes,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, Senate hearing here. It's a little frightening. Anyway, so I know this is a long time coming because we did start this process, as you said, in the summer where we did have conversations with our bank and with some investment advisors. And we did start doing our due diligence where we took some look at the programs that First Federal brought to us. We contacted the American Banking Association. We vetted all the paperwork through our attorney, Tom Reeves, to see if, all that was in order. We sent the information then to our auditors to make sure we would be in compliance with them. So, and then taking the time to research and really us understanding, we kind of get a grasp and an understanding of what's required. So, but finally we're here to try to do this workshop and talk to you about investments. We do have with us today representatives from First Federal Bank of Florida. John Medina is their Chief Executive Officer, and Stephanie McClendon is their Chief of Retail Community Banking and Executive Vice President. And then here we have with us Rod Bettini, who is the Director of Investment Advisory with Public Trust Advisors here. And then this Matt Teitz with us from the Florida Cooperative Liquid Asset Security System, Florida CLASS is what it's called for short, its acronym. And Matt is the Senior Director of Investment Services and the team lead for that. So they will be coming up to talk to you a little bit later in the presentation. I'm going to first give a presentation about what the statute it requires and kind of give you all of that overview and even come out of that with a recommendation about how we want to move forward. And then after that, we will then bring up the folks from First Federal and then folks from Public Trust and Florida CLASS to talk to you. And then we'll circle back up with a discussion, if that works for y'all. So let's just kind of get into, I think I just kind of talked about the agenda here on my presentation. We're going to cover the Florida statutes governing the investing of the district funds. Then the local government investment policies within the statute. Then we're going to kind of talk about our current policies and procedures that we have in place. And then we're going to kind of then talk about what authorized deposits are and qualified public depository, which that would be First Federal. And then we're going to come back and circle back around to an investment type of local government investment pools and what those mean and what our options are there. Then I'll kind of summarize what I've just talked about. Again, we'll bring up the two presentations and follow up with a discussion. So the statute that governs investments for local government surplus funds is Chapter 218 of the Florida statute. It has 7 sections. The first one being the purpose, which it is the intent of this part to promote the maximization of net interest earnings in investing surplus funds for local governments. And it's based on 3 different principles: investor protection, mandatory transparency, and proper governance. And so they lay those out as the principles for this statute. There is a definition then about what a local government is. That is where special districts fall, which makes us eligible or have to comply with this statute. So the next section is the Local Government Surplus Funds Trust Fund, which is what actually created the pool it's called Florida Prime, and it's administered by the State Board of Administration of Florida. And so they were being the ones that actually administered this pool. Now, the State Board of Administration of Florida is primarily the asset management tool or vehicle responsible for investing the state and local government assets, including the Florida retirement system. So their pool of assets is about probably $228 billion. Now, the pool that we would be involved in, Florida Prime, if we were to get into that, is not part of the Florida retirement system. So it's a very small portion of that, like $23 billion. But I just want you to understand that it's a bigger pool that's being managed here. And it is, the statute actually requires that it's governed by a 3-member board. The 3 members being the governor, the chief financial officer, and the attorney general. This part of the statute actually lays out the objectives of this fund that is created, and the 3 objectives are safety, liquidity, and the competitive returns with minimization of risks. So everything that's created and everything that you write or has got to meet those primary objectives in that order. So the next section that is part of the statute talks about the local government investment authority. And it basically states that the governing board of the local government would need to review the trust fund documentation. They would need to enroll in the SBA. They would have to actually have a resolution and sign all the appropriate disclosure forms to even be able to invest in the fund. Now, in the past, the Water Management District was a member of SBA, and we had done that. It has been quite some time. I'm not sure if we will have to redo that, if that's something that we elect to do. But in the past, we have been a member of this fund. The next section is the authorization for state technical and advisory assistance, which basically gives SBA the authority to invest funds for local governments, as well as charge us fees for that service. Then the next section is rulemaking authority, basically giving SBA the ability to adopt rules necessary to administer the fund. And then the final, or the meat of this chapter of legislation is the local government investment policies. And so that actually has about 23 sections to it, and we're going to dive into this a little bit because this section determines whether you want to have a written investment policy versus operating without a written investment policy. And it also identifies what monies you can put with a qualified public depository like a bank. And then it also guides the board about how you make investment decisions. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Again, in this section, it is structured that your policies must place the highest priority on safety of principal and liquidity of funds, and your investment returns shall be secondary to safety and liquidity. So moving on and taking a little bit of a deeper dive into the Section 415 of the legislation, Sections 1 through 15 talk about the requirements of a written policy. And those have components like the scope, investment objectives, performance measures, all these things have to be dealt with in your policy. Prudence and ethical standards, listing of authorized investments, maturity and liquidity requirements, your portfolio composition, your risk and diversification, your authorized investment institutes and dealers, your third-party custodial agreements, your master repurchase agreements, internal controls, continuing education requirements that are 8 hours annually that are required if you have a written policy that you have to have for investment practices and the products. And also the final part, section 15, would be reporting. So all of those have to go as part of your written investment policy. Section 16 then lays out what your allowable investments are if you have a written policy. Now, in the absence, and I will stop here and say that the 3 largest water management districts actually do operate with an investment policy. There are the two of us that operate without one are Northwest and us. And so I think too that those with the written investment policies also have paid investment advisors or people who manage their portfolios. Okay. So I will say now that section 17 lays out what are the allowable investments without a written investment policy. I want to show you this slide that kind of details the difference between the types of allowable investments, whether you have a written policy in the green or without a written investment policy to the right. So as you can see, it was staying, which quite honestly, we are operating without a written policy, and I'm going to recommend that we stay without a written policy because we do see, you can see that without a written investment policy, we still have flexibility to invest in local government investment pools, which I'm going to talk to you more about, as well as the folks from Public Trust and Florida Class will talk to you about. We can invest in money market funds. We can also invest in the deposit accounts, certificates of deposits, these type of things with a qualified public depository, which First Federal is going to come and talk to you more about. And then we could also invest in U.S. Treasury bonds. So the other type of investments that you see here, like the federal agency and instruments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, mortgage lending, government, these other type of investments, having a written policy would just allow us to invest in some other things, but we would be able to stay with this flexibility without a written policy. So I'm really not seeing the need in us going through the effort and what we would have to go through to put a written investment policy together. Okay, so going back to the different sections again on the investment policies is sections 18 through 22 are securities, pre-existing contracts, conflicts, and audits. It talks more about what you would have to do with these local government investment policies. And then the section 23 talks about authorized deposits and the qualifications or what public deposit, what you can do with your just deposits, surplus deposits at a bank, basically. And then this section 24, which was just added in 2023, is a guidance for investment decisions. So it is for the district. It would be providing investment decisions. It's a guidance to the district on making investment decisions, and it requires you to have, this is the wording, prudent assessment of the impact on risk and return of investment objectives without the consideration, and this is the important part, of social, political, or ideological interests. So again, this was just added by the governor in 2023 because it basically prohibits the board from making investment decisions based on an ESG factor, which is environmental, social, and governance score that's given to different agencies. So they prohibit those using that type of score to make investment and contracting decisions. So that is basically what I wanted to talk to you about, the statute. I will kind of come back around and circle back around to Section 23 in just a minute. But what I wanted to do now is kind of talk about what our current policies and procedures are. So our current guidance is pretty streamlined, and because we are operating without a written policy. So I do want to tell you that back in 1995, the governing board did adopt what they called at the time an investment policy, but it was very short. And what it did do at that time is it allowed us to invest our surplus funds with SBA. Since then, in 2012, we created these procedures that pretty much overrode this old policy, and it kind of laid out, there's two sections in our procedures manual, and it's section 19.2 and 19.5. 19.2 is shows that where we can put talks about our banking and our accounts, and it tells us that we can put our funds with a bank, SBA, and the special purpose investment account, SPIA, which again, y'all have heard me talk about SPIA, but I will talk to you about it in just a little bit more. So the other procedure that we do have is this talks about the investment accounts, and this is pretty much the sum total of the procedures related to our investment accounts, and it does talk about that we should maximize our earnings. Unfortunately, it doesn't talk about safety and liquidity. I do believe that this procedure needs to be updated. I'm going to be bringing that back to you probably. And it does talk about us doing weekly cash management and to see what our needs are for liquidity and investing the rest of our surplus funds. And it talks about where we can invest it with the accounts that I just talked to you about. But it also does have a little section in here that says that that money shall not be invested in investment brokers firms, nor shall it be invested by the district in at-risk stocks, bonds, securities, or other ventures without the authorization of the governing board. So this is the closest we have to safety that we've written into our policy, again, that will need to be updated. We also do have the finance directive that we did have you adopt back in 2020. And then I think it's been amended. It was amended in 2022. And that basically sets the stage for these procedures. And depending on the consensus of the board following the workshop, the directive and the procedures will be updated. So next, what I wanted to just talk to you about, the last that I wanted to circle back around to was the subsection 23 of the Florida statute that talks about authorized deposits. In addition to the types of investments that we could have that I showed you on the chart, our funds actually can, we can deposit our money, any portion of our surplus funds with in accordance with certain conditions. And the conditions are these 4 conditions. And the first condition is they can be deposited, the funds, with a qualified public depository. And that is a bank, a savings and loan, or other savings institutions. And our qualified public depository is First Federal. I'm going to refer to it as the bank. Now, the bank can also... So the next condition is that the bank can arrange for depositing the funds in financial deposit instruments that are insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So any monies that we have there must be insured or guaranteed. This is what First Federal is going to come and discuss with you in more detail. It also requires a condition that the full amount of the principal and interest of the monies be insured, and that limit is $250,000 per institution. So, everything okay? So the fourth qualification and final is that the bank can act as a custodian for the district with respect to these deposit instruments. And again, First Federal is going to talk more to you about that. So I'm going to jump back now because that's pretty much all that I had about the statute. But I do want to go back and talk to you about the local government investment pools and some kind of backtracking to talk about what other these allowable investment types that we have. So currently, one thing I want to tell you about local government investment pools is these pools are not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they don't have to follow the rules of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And also, these pools are not federally insured or guaranteed. So that's something that we need to know. So there are risks associated with getting in an investment pool. Now, that being said, we are currently using the Treasury's Special Purpose Investment Account. And I do want to talk to you a little bit about that and why we're there. The district's funds are currently invested in the SPIA account. That pool is about $61 billion. It is a small portion of what the Treasury investment pool managed by the Division of Treasury that's under the Florida Department of Financial Services. That pool is about, the Treasury pool is about $61 billion. SPIA is only about 9% of that, or about a little over $5 billion. So let me get that straight. Let me go back and remind you of that the Treasury, the pool that the Division of Treasury is managing is about $61 billion. SPIA is a small portion of that, and it's about 10% of that. And that's the part that local governments like us or other organizations can participate in. And so it's about 9% or about 5%. Now, this investment pool, SPIA, is a fixed income investment operation for the state's general revenue and the trust funds. So they use it as just their long-term investment pool to cover their general revenues and the trust funds that they manage. So while, as opposed to the Florida Prime or the State Board of Administration, not the Prime, but the State Board of Administration that manages the retirement system and Florida Prime. So, but going back to SPIA and the Treasury investment pool, their strategies are long-term in nature. So the investments that SPIA, that they make in this pool have a duration of a pool of about 3.3 years. So because of that long-term strategy, the investments that are here do not respond very quickly to market prices. So they don't change as quickly. So as of the last 12 months, the return on investments have been anywhere between 1.6% to 2.7%. So it was that range in the last 12 months. And that's also why we have to do that fair market value adjustment every year, because the investments in that pool are longer term and their market value changes. So that's why we have that. I come to you when we do our audit to talk about the fair market value adjustments that we have to make to our investments. So the next one that we did talk about that was created as part of the statute is the Florida Prime, and it's managed by the State Board of Administration. Now, I will tell you that again, Florida Prime is about a $23 billion or 10% of the funds that are managed by SBA, because their pool is about $228 billion. The investment strategies for this fund is short-term in nature, and the effective duration of this pool is 39 days. So as the market adjusts, it responds very quickly. And so they have had since, as of November 2023, the one-year yield net of their fees is about 4.87%. So you can see the short-term investment that responded to the market prices had a much better return over the last 12 months. And there's a minimal fair market value adjustments, again, because of the short-term nature of the investments. I do want to show you, this is kind of it kind of shows you the duration between the SPIA's long-term investment strategy. A third of their investments are less than a year, and about 55% are between 1 and 7 years. So the effective duration of the monies in this pool are longer term. Whereas when you look at Florida Prime, another local government investment pool with a short-term investment strategy, they have an effective maturity of 39 days because 70% of their investments are between 1 and 7 days. And then, you can see kind of how that breakout is of their strategies. Now, I will say, from 2022, in the time that I've been here, 2017, I have analyzed the difference between what we've received in investments with other water management districts of our size and the amount of funds that they have done. And we have done comparably the same through 2022 as our other water management district comparables on our investment returns. And I think it was, of course, because of the economy, the state of the economy. But in 2023, as the economy changed and market prices were going back up, we're going to be lagging behind because we are in this longer-term investment strategy that we're going to get a lesser return on our surplus funds. And I will tell you that, as I did before, we do a weekly review of our cash needs, and anything that is not needed for the week goes to SPIA. And it moves there. As we need it, we bring it back. And we have that in cyclical nature. When it's at the end of the fiscal year and we've been using up all of our monies, we don't have as much surplus funds. But when you start back with ad valorem, collecting ad valorem, and getting some of our appropriations come in, which now we have that as a reimbursable versus where we used to get it as a transfer. That's why we were trying to ask for the transfer back in. But right now we're getting as rent. It's very cyclical in nature. And a lot of the expenditures that we have, even all of our grants, these big grants that we get, we pay out the money out of our funds, and then we have to wait until the end. We wait quarterly, get reimbursement from them, and then wait another month to get them in. So you're talking about a 4 to 5 month churn sometimes of even the monies that we put out. So it's very cyclical in nature about how much surplus funds we actually do have. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out there for you. Other local government investment pools there is another one that SBA manages that members, and I don't really know enough about this to talk to you about it, but I think we'd have to gather some information, and some of the folks that are here might even be able to tell us a little bit more about it, but there is the trust fund that the members own and the members govern. It's governed by SBA, but the members have input about what can be invested. Another local government investment pool is the Florida Cooperative Liquid Assets Security System, which is Florida Class. It's managed by the Public Trust Advisors. These are the folks here, Rod and Matt, that will be talking to you about this fund. And it is more of the short-term investment type instrument. And then Florida Public Assets for Liquidity Management, which is Florida Palm. It's very similar, I think, in nature to Florida Class. It's managed by PFM Asset Management. And there are many other local government investment pools. I did not list them all here. I don't even know how many there are. But there's Florida Safe, Florida Star, and again, these folks can probably speak to you about how many others there are available. So I do want to say that if we, with your recommendation or in our discussion, that the funds that we have at SPIA, they do require that we keep a minimum of 40% of our last 3 months' average of deposits for a period of 6 months. So whatever we do decide about our long-term versus short-term investment strategies, we are going to keep by that floor that we would have to keep at least 40% of what we have had on deposit with them for at least a 6-month period, and I'm sure we could taper that off. That would taper as time went on if we wanted to move more money into short-term. So when we are considering the strategies for what we do with our surplus funds, keep in mind that 40% of it has to stay with SPIA in the long term because of the agreement that we have with them. So I want to then just kind of summarize here by saying that Chapter 218 of the Florida statute is our guidance, that we must that we must follow for investing local government funds. And then Section 218.415 of the Florida statute specifies the requirements of a written investment policy versus not having a written investment policy. It also identifies what investments are allowed, and it also talks about what type of funds can be handled, how qualified public depositors can handle our surplus funds. And then again, it guides the board on making investment decisions. So our current practices, again, fall under the Section 17 of the statute of the 218.415, parens 17 of the Florida statutes. So based on our surplus funds, that I would recommend that the district continues to manage investments without a formal written policy and follow this subsection 17 of the statute, allowing investments in a local government investment pools, money market funds, depository accounts, and U.S. Treasury bonds, if those options. And I would also recommend that the current directive or procedures get adjusted based on whatever we come up with here, and we might even consider ranges between amounts at the depository versus long-term versus short-term type investments if you wanted to come up with a strategy of that nature. And so that basically ends my presentation, and I want to then bring up to you, for you, the First Federal folks, and I think there's another presentation here. So I would ask that John Medina, the Chief Executive Officer, and Stephanie McClendon also come up, and they would talk to you about public depository.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you see fear in my eyes, it's not you, it's what's happening behind you. I've noticed a couple of you turn around. Lucky for you, I think my portion is going to be about 3 minutes. And really, I'm here to thank you for at least 3 things. One, thank you for allowing us the time to be here. Pam, thank you for coordinating it and being such a gracious host. I want to thank you for allowing us to be your local option. We have been your bank of choice for over 25 years, and we are honored to be able to serve this organization. We truly, truly are. Thanks to you and individuals, small businesses, and other municipalities, you know, we're able to invest millions of dollars back into the communities that we serve, back into your communities. And it's only because of relationships like yours that we're able to do that. In most of the communities that we're in, we tend to be one of the largest private employers. And so, we're very proud of you allowing us to borrow your intellectual capital to help serve to help serve you. We tend to generate significant amount of tax revenue for the communities that we serve. And we tend to do a lot from the standpoint of community development, making sure that those who are most in need in the communities that we're in are getting the resources they need to be able to thrive. And so I want to thank you for allowing us to be your local option. And the third thank you, as I look around where you're from, I either worked, went to school, or played a lot in your ecosystem. And so I want to thank you for what you're doing. I hope and pray that my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be able to come back and enjoy this ecosystem that you're helping to manage. And so never underestimate the value of your time as a volunteer and the impact you can have in this region. And so again, thank you for allowing us to be here. I'd like to consider us the local option, the local alternative. As you know, we've been around 60 years. We have a number of public entities in the communities that we serve. We're very stable. What you may not know, and I think is of interest, is we're the only mutual in the state of Florida. And what I mean by that is that we're owned by our depositors. And so technically we're owned by you, and you're my boss. And so we take that very seriously, primarily because we're not beholden to shareholders that may have short-term objectives that may compromise long-term stability. And so we're very, very proud of the fact that we're able to make long-term strategic decisions without regard to short-term situations. So anyway, thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for allowing us to be your local bank of choice. And thank you above all for what you do in public service. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Stephanie McClendon, who's got the meat of the presentation.
I want to thank John for joining me this morning, and I too want to thank you guys for this opportunity and allowing us to be on the agenda. So thank you, Pam, for putting this together. And as John stated, that we have serviced the water management for over 25 plus years. It's been a great partnership, and so we look forward to many more years. As Pam shared with you guys, the importance of the Florida statutes and following it, and the qualified public depositories. As John stated, that we service over $800 million in public funds, and we maintain and have very good, strong relationships. And what allows us to do that for a couple of things, as he stated, the bank's stability. Not all banks will hold public funds, qualified public deposit on their books, but it takes the strength and stability of an institution to be able to do that. We probably about 10 years ago partnered with this company, Intrify, that will allow you to, or allow us to insure for one entity up to $200 million fully covered FDIC with no concerns, no issues. And how we do it is it's a partnership of other banks. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But this program has been in place for 20 plus years. Founded in 2002. It's regulated by the FDIC. 95% of the bank's participants are community banks, are banks of sizes of $1 billion or more in assets. They have to be highly regulated in order to be a part of this program. So when I share that with you all, stating the very large regional banks that we won't name any to name, they're not a part of the program because, again, they have to be highly regulated and in good standing. Also endorsed by the American Bankers Association as well. So this, again, recognized and trusted over 20 years. It tells you a little bit about, we won't go into a lot, how they lead in the industry, again, with FDIC. As you look at investment, mutual funds, it's a well-run program, but they're not covered by FDIC. Sometimes your funds can be gated. So this program allows you to have your funds fully insured up to $200 million and can be accessed at any time. So what are ICS and CDARS? So the difference in the two. The ICS program is they call Intrify Cash Service. it serves like a money market. You can get to it at any time. The Cedars part is an actual CD. It has terms anywhere from 30 days all the way up to 5 years. So you can decide if you want to do a CD. And again, as most CDs, you guys are very familiar with them, it's a set term, it's a contract, and you lock it in for that duration. And the ICS is what I would recommend to the water manager for the fact that you can place idle funds, but you also can get access to them at any time quickly. It's, like I said again, considered a money market account. So peace of mind, earning interest. And one thing that I like to share on that particular bullet is even though we're in this program, we as First Federal, Mr. Medina, our CFO, we set the interest rate on these products. We are in full control of the interest rates that are offered on this product. It is not being set by another board, by another institution. It's set by us. Pam would deal directly with the bank, with her banker, for any needs of funds moving in and out. So that's the flexibility. And as John stressed, and I cannot stress more, upon the importance of the local community piece. And you may wonder, how does that affect a local community? Well, when we're able to keep the funds, and we again partner with our banks, we then lend back out into our communities. And so that's how the part of the community banking piece is so important for us to have partners such as the water management, because we can keep those deposits and then lend back out to our communities. So that's where that local community piece comes into play. Again, it talks about peace of mind, saving time, dealing directly with the bank. We actually set up a shadow account on the eCorp online services that the finance department here uses. They would actually see at all times the balances of the accounts that they would have in the ICS. Again, it's a shadow account, so it mimics what you have with IntraFi. Again, flexibility, earning interest, which is set by us, and then again, the local economic value that it provides and impacts to our communities, allowing us to put the money back into our local communities versus Wall Street, or in stocks and mutual bonds. So that's the importance. And again, the flexibility piece, you email directly to a banker. You're not dealing with someone that's in another state, another country. You're going to contact your local banker that's assigned to the water management's account, and that's who you would deal with. This is only deposit scenarios, guys. We're not going to get into numbers as Pam stated, but this kind of just gives you an idea what the current rate SPIA was paying versus when Pam reached out and we were talking, she was wanting to look at some investment options versus at that time what First Federal was willing to pay on the different balances. As you can see, it starts at $5 million and goes all the way to $40 million, and you guys can just do your math. Again, these are just scenarios. Approximate earnings. Also, too, I want to mention that is the ending SPIA rate as of November. So again, just scenarios for you guys, no number crunching that we're going to do today, but wanted you all to have that for your future discussions if you were to invest certain amounts where you would currently be at. Again, First Federal's rate is controlled by us. We, would, with the market, like anything else, increase or decrease. So it just depends on where the market is going. And then just earnings comparison for you guys. And so we'll then go, how does it work? Very, very simple. You place your funds with your depository, which would be First Federal. You would deal with us directly. Your funds are then placed with banks that participate in this network of banks. They do not know your information. They do not get your name, your address, your tax ID. You are simply a number. They deal directly with us. We keep your information private. They then divide the funds among the banks that we need to keep it all insured. If there were any funds that you had placed in any other banks or institution, and part of the documents, Pam could say, I want this bank excluded, do not place my funds there, and we could do that at any time. We can exclude any banks that you want that would be in the network. Again, we always ask that up front so we know not to place funds there to keep you within that $250,000 limit. Again, remember, we can insure one entity up to $200 million. Straightforward steps. I kind of laugh, so don't hold this against me, John. I say it's a lot quicker to open an ICS or Cedars account as it does to open an actual bank account. So it's literally 3 or 4 little places you sign. The one placement is used for all products that you open through IntraFi. We don't have to continue to do documents, so it's one main master agreement, so that makes it very nice. Again, you can tell us where you want them placed, and if there's certain banks you do not want them placed. You can check your balances and see them throughout the day. You can log on at any time that funds needed to be transferred back. She would simply send an email, and we would immediately, same day, it's credited right back into whatever account that she would choose or tell us to. Your statement, you will receive all of your documentation, your information will come from us because we act as your custodian. At the end of the year, the only thing that you will receive from the Bank of Mellon out of New York is the interest statement because they keep up with that. But that is it. Everything else, your monthly statements, everything will come from First Federal Bank. We are your bank. We act as your custodian. Again, this is the control panel that the finance director and her staff would have access to check balances, to see where funds have been placed daily, track monthly to see if there's any withdrawals, transaction history. Again, everything is handled, withdrawals will be handled by First Federal and same-day credit. Again, so this would just be a portal that she would have access to see exactly what's in the account. Then this is just a little bit about the safety-conscious customers that we have businesses. We have a number of government entities that utilize this program, nonprofits, and then, of course, there's others. There's individuals as well that may take advantage of this because of their FDIC concerns. And so who is a custodian of my funds? Well, you would be placed through the ICS and CDARS deposited only in insured institution, but your relationship, once again, your bank, First Federal, we act as your custodian for your deposits, and we place those for you. As I stated earlier, the sub-custodian would be the Bank of New York Mellon, and at the end of the year, they provide the interest statement, and that is it. You would not deal with them. They would never contact you whatsoever. Again, you would deal only with us. And as you can see under them, the largest custodian in the world, $46.6 trillion in assets, and administration of $1.9 trillion in assets under management. So well-ran program and fully capable of handling it. So how can my funds be used locally if I deposit them? Again, as we stated, everything that you would put in the program would stay with First Federal because we are able to then work with others in the program. We swap funds basically, and then allows us to have that liquidity to make loans back out to our local communities. We do have permission to share references. These are local individuals. The tax collector's office in Columbia County, she uses the program. They've been using it for a number of years. She said, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, the ease of it or any concerns. And also the clerk of court in Holmes County. They actually had a bad storm come through this morning. That's the Bonifay. And he as well has said, please, if any questions or concerns that you may have, you all are welcome to reach out to them. Glad to be used as a reference, and they've been using the program. And they actually use it in 2 different ways. The tax collector, it's a very similar structure to how they work here with the excess funds go out, only keep what you need. The Holmes County, they place idle funds and kind of just let it sit. So it may be very worthwhile reaching out as references because they use the program in 2 different ways, but allowing them to earn a higher interest rate and be fully FDIC insured. So that is the end of our presentation. So Ms. Pam, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Madam Chair, we could entertain questions now, or we could wait till the discussion after the following presentation.
Okay, probably you want to just do it now or wait till the end?
I got a couple of questions, but I mean, I can wait.
Well, it's all fresh on our mind right now, so,
Okay.
Mr.
So
Lee?
the liquidity of the funds, or part of your presentation, it was basically in certificates of deposit with these banks over a period of term. Some of them short-term, some of them long-term.
2 options, yes, sir, Mr. Thompson. You could either do a CD, which is a term, or we could offer the ICS, which serves as a money market, and it's open liquid, and you can access it at any time.
Okay.
No term set on it.
So that, I must have got them confused a little bit, because I thought the ICS funds were also going in depository fixed-term
No, sir.
dates, and I was concerned about the liquidity of that
Yes,
if
sir.
we needed the funds.
You could get to them at any time.
Okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Yeah, that answers that question. And then how is the rate determined? I mean, is every participant, your other customers, is everybody getting the same rate, or is the rates based on the number of the dollars that we deposit and how much we need at certain times? I mean, is that how you base it?
We're paying interest.
Yes, sir. Do I still have a job?
To answer your question, Mr. Thompson, we look at the profitability of the overall relationship in making that pricing decision. And so obviously, we look at the yield curves and the cost of funds in the markets, but at the end of the day, we really look at each individual, and I say each individual, depending on the magnitude of the relationship, we absolutely do relationship pricing. A municipality that has $2 million in deposits, and that's the only thing they have, may be getting a different rate than somebody that's got a significantly larger relationship that generates more revenue.
We want the most we can get.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Some of mine had to do with what Larry said too. I was concerned with how and when adjustments are made to the rates. Okay. Apparently, these are proposed numbers we're looking at. So is it an annual review with the banks, or does this change monthly at times? Because we know the financial market is very flexible right now, so to speak.
So we do meet monthly. We have a committee that we review because we too want to be fair with relationships to make sure that we're keeping up with the market. However, we also too are very fair, and we like to notify our customers in advance. So when we do offer a rate, we try to keep it in place for, especially with the system, at least 60 days. And we would come ahead of time to make you aware that, hey, rates are adjusting, and so we're going to be adjusting the rates. We just don't change it without notification. So it could remain at, I'm just throwing a number out there, 2% for 6 months. It could remain at 4% for 6 months. But again, we notify you. But we do meet monthly, and we review the hiring relationships, as John stated, because we want to make sure that we're pricing out accordingly to the relationship.
And Mr. Keith, that's certainly the case on the money market, the ICS component. On the CDARS component, it's basically you lock in a rate for the time frame that you select.
Thank you for bringing that.
And one other question. On the guarantee, and I get it, we're splitting this up amongst many banks. So are we still dealing with FDIC, or are we looking at ICS for backing? Where are we at on that?
It's backed 100% by FDIC. So the number of institutions that are part of this program, that's why the funds are then divvied out to each separate institution to cover your $250,000, but it is 100% FDIC covered, 100%.
I like the fact they still use that term about backed by the full confidence of the U.S. government.
The full faith and credit of the U.S. government, yes, sir.
It's warm and fuzzy, isn't it?
It is.
That's it, okay.
Thank you.
Most of the questions got answered, but the one question is if you can get 200 million covered for us, is that offered to go to an individual?
It can be for any individual. That's how many banks are in the network. And so, yes, we can get coverage up to $200 million.
Or anybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it fluctuates, it's depending on if institutions, it has to do with the number of institutions that are part of the program. So if you had some that pulled out or some that maybe needed to be excluded, then that number would be lowered. But currently, as of today, that is the number that we could insure.
I was just curious if it was just for government, taking care of the government, or?
Yeah, no.
Last one.
Yes.
Is there a minimum that the district has to keep invested? A minimum dollar figure?
There's not a minimum, no, sir, not in the ICS. As stated with the CDAR, the CD term, yes, it is a minimum. You lock it in for that term, but on the money market side, there's not per se a minimum, but in order to earn the higher return rate, of course, we would suggest, certain level, a certain amount be left in there. And again, that could be negotiated.
Okay, and when you say that you give notice of the interest rate change,
Yes.
you give notice in adequate time that if the district wished to withdraw its funds and place them somewhere else, it would have the
We
opportunity
give
to
you
do
30,
so.
30 days.
Okay.
If we meet and we decide, we give 30-day notice. And the banker actually reaches out to the individual, to the entity. It's not a letter sent, and to make you aware that an adjustment will be made the following month. So you get 30 days. Yes, sir.
Any more questions?
Madam Chair.
Nope.
One more vote. So all the banks involved in the ICS program are QPD.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
They're required.
And then in the group that you formed, y'all have an agreement for flexibility of return of funds. Because obviously these banks are gonna put them in CDs or some type of thing, so if we have full flexibility of return, then there must be some cooperative agreement in your group, because the money's spread all over the country, or
Yes, sir. It's pretty, how it's reciprocal, it would be swapped for the same type funds, so the funds. So it would not be locked up. We would not then send the money to a bank and then they lock it into a 12-month term. So it's reciprocal, so it would be the same type product that it would be going to.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was
Thank
very
you again.
helpful.
Thank you all.
So, next, do we need a break, or we want to move forward?
Anybody need a
Madam
break?
Chair?
Go right into the next, okay, we can move forward.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, we do have from Public Trust Advisors, Rod Bettini, and from Florida Class, Matt Tite. And they're gonna, should see their career.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for allowing us to be here. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Kristen. We really appreciate the time. We're here to talk today about Florida Class and Public Trust Advisors. My name is Rod Bettini. I'm a Director of Investment Advisory for Public Trust. Public Trust is the investment advisory firm that manages Florida Class. My colleague Matt Tite is a Senior Director. He's been leading Florida Class since the inception of the pool. He will do a deep dive into the pool. I will speak a little bit more broadly about Public Trust as investment advisor. We currently manage 17 investment pools across the country, approximately $80 billion in assets. Our sole focus is managing investment pools. We've been doing so since our inception. We were founded on investment pool management. We work exclusively with public sector entities, very much like yourselves. We are well familiar with water districts. We have an 11-year relationship with SwiftMud. We've been working with St. John's for 7 years now. And we thought this was a wonderful opportunity to offer our services. And in speaking with Kristen and Pam, we wanted to find a way to help the district optimize your funds, and in the absence of a written policy, do so in a way that wasn't a huge departure from what you're currently doing. A way that wasn't going to compromise liquidity, wasn't going to compromise safety, basically mirror what you're doing, but just diversify. We believe diversification is key, not just diversification in the instrument that you're using, but diversification along the yield curve. As Pam mentioned, SPIA is running a 3-year plus duration. That means it's going to take them a little while to catch up to current rates. Florida Class, very much like Prime, runs, as of today, a 39-day duration. So we're much more flexible, able to capture current market rates. As of this morning, our yield was 5.47%, which is just over double of what SPIA is currently offering. And as I said, it's going to take them a minute. Given the floor that you have with SPIA And above and beyond that, we don't recommend pulling all the funds. There will come a day when SPIA recovers. It may take a minute, but there will come that day. That's why we think having a diversified portfolio along the liquidity curve, whichever vehicle you end up choosing, is the most prudent and most effective way to manage your funds. With that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague Matt. He's going to give a little bit of the history of the fund, why it was put together, and talk a little bit about the mechanics, how the fund works. We are the only fund in the state that pays and accrues daily, so you benefit from a greater compounding effect. We have no minimums, and we pay the same rate whether you invest $1 or whether you're one of our 26 counties that invest over hundreds of millions. Matt, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Rod, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present today. My name's Matt Tite. I technically work at Public Trust Advisors, who is the administrator and manager for the Florida Class program. Florida Class, just to give you a little bit of history, was created back in 2015, and I'm sure many of you may remember back during the credit crisis of 08 and 09, Florida Prime was the only local government investment pool in the state of Florida. In fact, it was, I think, the largest local government investment pool in the country at the time, to a tune of about $30 billion under management. Back then, Florida Prime was not rated. Now, local government investment pools have to be rated of the highest quality eligible for a local government investment pool, which is AAA by any SRO. So back then, no one really could see under the hood of what Florida Prime was investing in. Now, with new rules and regulations in place and the utmost transparency, these types of vehicles are very transparent in the sense that you could see what these types of vehicles are investing in. So the dynamic, the landscape has changed quite dramatically. But as Rod had mentioned, we're one of the largest pools in the state of Florida, with roughly $8 billion under management, approaching 175 local government participants in the state of Florida. And what you have in front of you is not only the presentation, but I included 2 one-pagers. One is a list of the participants that are currently invested in the fund, and the other one-pager is just the historic rate information based in 2023. But real quickly, really the purpose of Florida Class is to provide a short-term, convenient investment option for Florida local governments, another diversified option out there for local governments to invest in without having all their eggs in one basket. It is a authorized investment under Florida Statute 218-415. It is an intergovernmental investment pool, and as I mentioned, it was created back in 2015 by the Clerk of Court in Pinellas County, the Clerk of Court in Palm Beach County, and the Orange County Tax Collector. I believe we seeded the fund in July of 2015 with $150 million under management, and we've quickly grown to $8 billion in a very short time frame. And I really feel this is the reason. The Board of Trustees is a very engaged board. Now, as Rod mentioned, we serve on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the participant. We do not own this product. We do not write the bylaws. We don't write the rules. We really report to the board with respect to managing the investments within, from the marketing to the council, to the insurance, really all the costs associated with managing it. But at the end of the day, this is a board-driven fund, and the participants have a say in the decision-making process as well. The board meets quarterly. Ken Burke, who's the clerk and comptroller of Pinellas County, is the chairman, and Jim Cook, who's the city treasurer in Tallahassee, is the vice chairman. But again, I do feel that the governance aspect, the engagement of this board is really why this fund has grown as rapidly as it has in a short time frame. Florida Prime does have a governance aspect, but it's the governor, it's the CFO, and it's the Attorney General. Not sure how engaged they are in the day-to-day, but I can tell you that the board of Florida Class is extremely engaged and very involved. This is a quick breakdown of the participant base. Some of these slides have year-end data. This is as of September 30th. But as you can see, it's a well-diversified mix of entity types within the state. Not all entities in the state of Florida have the same cash flows. Granted, it is tax season, so money is coming in right now. But everyone has different liquidity parameters. So we prefer to have a well-diversified mix of entity types for those reasons, to have cash readily at all times if needed. We do have two investment options. What we've really kind of focused on today is the Florida Class Daily Liquidity Fund, which is a AAA-rated fund by Standard & Poor's. It does provide same-day liquidity, and that the yield that Rod had mentioned, 5.47%, is what that portfolio is currently paying. We do have an enhanced cash portfolio, which is a little longer duration portfolio than Florida Class Liquid. Same investments within, it's just going out the yield curve a little bit. In this current environment, because the yield curve is inverted, the daily liquidity fund is paying a little bit more than the enhanced cash fund. But fast forward 6 months, if the market is anticipating where rates will be, the enhanced cash pool will most likely outperform the daily liquidity fund. This is a sample portfolio composition. Really, at the end of the day, what we're investing in is very high-quality liquid investments, treasuries, agencies, commercial paper, money market funds, overnight repo. Commercial paper is really where the yield, you're getting the yield for the portfolio is really in that credit space. We have a dedicated research staff of 11 individuals out at our headquarters in Denver, Colorado, that are doing the due diligence and analytics on all the credits within. Not many pools in the state can say that. A lot of pools outsource their credit research management. We feel this is probably the most important component of running these types of pools, is really understanding the credit and understanding what investments we're selecting for the participant base. Here's a snapshot of our growth since inception. As you can see, we have almost added $1 billion per year since inception. Obviously, through COVID, when there was a lot of uncertainty and volatility, we plateaued a little bit, but since then, we've grown quite a bit, and 2023 has been a very successful year. And a lot of that has to do with yields in the current economic environment. When you're getting paid 5.5% on cash, effectively a risk-free investment, it's a very compelling investment for a lot of local governments where, over the past 10 years, there really hasn't been much yield. And this is just a performance snapshot. The one pager in front of you probably has a little bit more detailed information with respect to historic yields, but this gives you an idea of the 1, 3, 5 year and since inception numbers for these types of pools, or these types of prime style funds. And this is enhanced cash as well. You do have some benefits. Probably the most important benefit is that daily compound of interest. Your money is earning money on a daily basis. In most cases, other funds and banks will earn interest daily, but they don't pay it back into your account to the end of the month. Florida Class pays it back into your account daily, so you're getting that daily compounding effect that adds up to additional interest income over time. No transaction fees, no minimum investments. With respect to fees, important question, what are the fees? The 5.47% yield is net of fee. We have the ability to charge the Board of Trustees up to 15 basis points for the management and administration of the program. We could charge 1 basis point, we could charge 15. On average, we charge 10. Just the fact that we manage other local government investment pools throughout the country, we lean on our technology providers, and just due to economy of scale, we can be a low-cost provider for these types of vehicles. So you do have funds in the state that are charging anywhere between 15 to 20. We're very comfortable with charging in the ballpark of 10. We can waive fees entirely to be competitive, but we feel 10 basis points is a sweet spot for us. But that net rate at the end of the day is net of fee, and that's what you as a participant would earn on a daily basis. If you were to join Florida Class, everyone associated with the fund would receive online credentials. You could download reports, see transactions, daily confirms, really anything associated with your account you would have access to online. And you would have a dedicated team, both Rod and myself here locally, and then our client research and portfolio management trading desk out in Denver. We have a cutoff time of 3 p.m. If you need funds same day, you get your withdrawal order in by 3 p.m., you'll have your funds within an hour back to the bank account on file. And if you were to choose to join, there's 2 ways to join. You could join via instrument of adoption or resolution. It's really up to you all and how the comfort level to join these types of funds. We do have a model resolution on file if that is the route you choose to go. This is just a snapshot of similar investments in 2023, what you would have earned. The fund in and of itself earned $274 million for Florida local governments in 1 year alone. And again, as Rod mentioned, there are no minimums to join. You can have $1 in the fund, you can have $100 million in the fund, and you're earning the same rate. You could have unlimited sub-accounts. If you have bond proceeds or ARPA CARES money, whatever the case may be, you could have unlimited sub-accounts. And as I believe I mentioned, the current rate is 5.47%.
Correct.
This is a list of the pools that we manage across the country. As Rod had mentioned, we're approaching 85 billion under management in certain states. As like Florida, we're kind of height in the tax season right now, as far as the cycle of cash flows are concerned. So that number kind of ebbs and flows. But this gives you an idea of some of the other pools that we manage across the state, or across the country, excuse me. And as Florida Class grows, we're just shy of $8 billion. There's always a 20% buffer of cash that we keep readily available for any redemption requests. As I mentioned, the fund is rated by Standard & Poor's at AAA-M. The portfolio goes to Standard & Poor's on a weekly basis. So they run it through their rating methodology for that AAA-M rating. They rubber stamp it, they send it back to us, and again, that's on a weekly basis that a set of eyes is looking at the portfolio with respect to risk parameters, liquidity parameters. But again, we keep 20% liquid at all times to meet any redemption request. So as the fund grows, so does that liquidity buffer. So we have ample amount of liquidity readily available for any large withdrawal requests. I know that was a lot. I'll pause there and maybe open it up for questions if you don't have anything else.
Let me just quickly add, we are the second largest pool after Prime, which Pam had mentioned. We believe the biggest differences are our compounding frequency, but more importantly, access. We are here. Matt is down the road in Jacksonville. I'm in Tampa. We're here at a day's notice, and our experience in the sector, we also believe, adds value. So I just wanted to add that Prime is managed out of an office in Chicago. I believe they don't have a local rep here present. And while for some folks that's not important, we believe having a face associated to the entity that you're working with is important, and we take pride in our personal relationship. So I just wanted to add that, should that be the case with the board.
Yeah, and I'll just end by saying I think the current investment strategy that you all have right now is a solid one, but I think there's other opportunities considering the marketplace and the economy. I guess what a solution we would recommend would be lean on your local bank. Absolutely. We recommend that for all of our local government clients that currently invest in Florida Class. You obviously have a floor at SPIA, and that will ultimately come back, as Rod mentioned, and take advantage of that longer-term strategy. But for any excess reserves that you really need to keep in cash, I would suggest Florida Class. You're earning effectively double what you're currently earning. I'm not sure what you're earning at the bank, but keep a certain amount at Florida Class, utilize your local presence with the bank, and then a longer-term strategy with SPIA, and you're well diversified while earning, additional interest income.
And as the yield curve levels, we hope that it, goes back to normal. Should that be the case, then we also have other options still within liquidity parameters that we could offer, whether it be a term product, whether it be enhanced cash, but you dip your toe in the water with Florida Class now. We see where we are in 6 months, and then maybe we lock in a greater rate with a term product, or you go out a little further on the maturity curve with enhanced cash. But for now, we thought the most prudent way to approach this in a measured capacity, replicate what you're doing in a sense, but just bank on the greater yield and the shorter duration that Florida Class has to offer. And with that, we'll open to any questions, thoughts, whatever the board may have.
That's on this end?
Yeah.
Okay.
This goes back to Pam. Pam, the SPIA long-term return, I'll just use an example. Their long-term return rate on, that's the enhanced class, let's see. Is 1.56%. That's over since inception, which would be since 2015. Would you say the SPIA return is it mirror that somewhere close, or is it always going to be less?
So, thank you. They may need y'all here, so just let me, they can't hear me. So, my understanding is through 2022, I could say, yes, it mirrored. It was pretty much mirrored. With the economy and the change of 2023, we may see a little bit of a bump difference. And I don't know about long-term. I can't speak to that, about what the economy will do, but SPIA has served us well for the long term. It's just now with the economy and the market prices that have gone up, we're kind of losing some ground, I think.
Well, my point is that in absence of a financial advisor like many of our districts have, we have to make that decision at some point. So are you taking on the burden of monitoring it through these advisors, whether it be the bank or whether it be this fund, to know when to pull back and put more funds in SPIA? Somebody has to be forecasting that. And we don't have that person on staff, so we've got to know that we're maximizing our ability without risk.
I do believe, and I was going to come back around to that, is maybe what we might want to think about doing, and I was even going to come back to you even next month, is maybe kind of come up with a range of a 3-part investment portfolio that would be with our depository, then a short-term type of investment with a local investment pool, which, whether it be Florida Class, Florida Prime, or even, there was another one that I was looking at, but there's another one that we might, Palm, thank you, Florida Palm investor. Anyway, and then the long-term investments with SPIA. So if we can keep it simple, but keep it flexible, and be able to move the money as we need, I think we could manage it. Christine and I could handle the management of that without any problem.
Well, your relationship with whoever, your financial advisor, the people that are managing the money, it'll be developed, and over time, you'll know, you'll have that trust to know that you're getting your maximum return here. But in the short term, I'm a little bit queasy about who's pulling the strings And I don't think we as a board want to have to be every month monitoring whether or not we're maximizing that, so.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I do believe the finance department can manage if we don't get too intricate with our portfolio and too many avenues of
And
investing.
I am
in
very
those.
surprised with our regulated society today that we're not mandated to have a written policy.
Me too.
So, just, yeah. It's a good
Thank
thing.
you.
I see your point in not having that mandated policy.
Madam Chair. In Florida class.
Yes, sir.
Our risk is largely based on the money managers that you employ.
The risk, yeah, well, that's a part of it for sure. There's market.
We don't have a backing, what I'm saying.
Correct.
It's like
There's-
any other investment portfolio with the Edward Jones or whoever.
Right, yeah, just like with any other investment, there is a risk associated with it. I would say that the AAAM rating, the stable net asset value rating, where the portfolio is managed to $1 every single day. I can't say there's a guarantee, but it's about as risk-free as you're going to get with respect to what governments can invest in, meaning that AAA rating, AAAM rating. Now, yes, there's always credit risk, there's always market risk, there's always manager risk. But with respect to the duration of this portfolio, how short in nature it is, and the quality of investments within, it's one of the safest options out there. But it's not risk-free.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Any other questions for this group?
We're good on this end? All right, what about this end down here? Y'all all good? Okay.
Thank you again for
Thank you.
the opportunity to present.
Thank you.
Listen, we appreciate both you guys coming and talking with us, because we've learned a lot, and good information, and will certainly help us making decisions. I appreciate it. Braving this weather.
So, Madam Chair, so far we've made it.
I just,
Somebody's keeping an eye on the window. Oh, that's the calm before the storm there.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
One question back to Pam. Obviously, we need to do some thought and research here and circle back around and have a discussion, but with our input and kind of getting a feel, do you come back to the board with a recommendation on how you think things should proceed, and then we modify, or do we have another workshop where we work that out? I mean, I'm just curious what the process is going to be here.
Madam Chair? So basically, what we need to do, and if you wanted to have the discussion now about setting some ranges of having these different, as I'm recommending possibly that we have monies with our depository and allow them to do the ISC or ICS account. I will need to bring that back for you to approve that next month, if that's something you want to do. If you want to get involved with Florida Prime or Florida Class, I can make that recommendation for you at a certain range of percentage if you wanted us to do that, or you could leave it open for us, to have these venues or these tools at our disposal and be able to manage it and, be able to report it as part of the financial reporting of where we stand with it. So it's kind of up in the air, but we would need to come back next month with whatever your recommendation or consensus is among the board today. Next month, we'd have to kind of put that in place with updating our procedures, updating our directive, and kind of laying out what our plan is.
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes.
it is just a thought, but it's certainly the prerogative of the board. If the board wanted to either long-term or short-term develop like a finance committee made up of board members, similar to what we have with our lands committee or the committee to evaluate my performance, whatever, to discuss that in a committee setting. Certainly, we could do that as well. I mean, it would still be open to the public of it being a district committee on that side. But that's just one option. I'm not necessarily suggesting it. I just want to make you aware of that.
I was thinking, and Pam, you just stop me if I'm going down the wrong road here, but obviously, we want to make sure that we are in compliance with all the regulations that we have to be in compliance with. And then, I guess the next gauge that is our duty is safety. And I would certainly feel comfortable if, in whether you're working with some of these folks or maybe come up with a suggestion, which I like the three-part portfolio we were discussing, as how much of a percentage of our funds that we might want to look at each part of that third part portfolio, to make sure we still comply with the safety and risk-free compliance that we have to meet. And come up with a suggestion that we certainly can tweak, but at least it has been vetted to make sure that we are in compliance with the rule. Would that be something that you could put together for us? And then certainly bring it back to us, and then we can discuss how much, and if we wanted to change the percentages of the different vehicles that we would use to put our investments in.
I certainly agree, and like these gentlemen, they deal in diversity.
Yes.
And that's where we should be
Yes,
also.
I agree.
Our safest vehicle. And so at what point in percentages do we want to break things up? Further discussion.
Madam Chair? It's my understanding, Pam, that they've already both vetted, they meet the requirements necessary. We could put all of our funds with either one of these people, and we would still be, as far as the state regulations go, we would be okay. It's just a decision the board needs to make as to what percentage of funds do we want to put in these pools, wherever that might be. One question I do have for you, though, is on the SPIA funds, we're required to retain 40%, and I heard a term of 6 months. Was that 6 months of what we draw, or is that 6 months and then it starts waning off, and ultimately at some point we may only have to have 20% in there? Can you clarify that?
Madam Chair, you're correct, Mr. Thompson. It's the current requirement, and they actually just dropped it effective February 1st, that we used to have 60% of our last 3 months' average balance that we kept with them. And they've just dropped it from 60 to 40% effective February 1st. So we would have to maintain at least 40% of our last 3 months' average balance at SPIA for a 6-month period. And I have not checked this, but I would believe that we could go down, because the 3-month average balance would be lower, and so we could deteriorate some of that in our long-term investments if we wanted to. However, prudent, and I'm very risk averse. I think you do have a good option to keep monies in long-term investments, because we do have a lot of funds that are restricted, and we do have to maintain them for certain purposes. So yes.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, we would never want to pull all of our funds out of SPIA, but I was just curious if we were limited at that 40%. Like, over the past 12 months, we would want as much of that fund, as many of those funds that we could have out of there into, vehicles that are going to earn more interest rate. As things turn around and they stabilize and rates start going back down, we may find that we need more money in SPIA over the long term. So having the ability to be diverse and move those funds is the kind of the questions that I need to have vetted for me to be able to say, well, if you got some over here that, well, we can move your funds, but if you need 50% of them, we're gonna need 30 or 60 days to move that amount, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
those funds that we really definitely need liquid, I would recommend that we keep them at our public depositor, First Federal, and then, think about a possible range of short-term investments of funds that could maybe make some additional yield for us in this current economy, either with Florida Prime or Florida Class or Florida Palm, one of the other local government investment pools. Again, to decide which one of those is something that will need further discussion, and that might be something with the treasurer that we need to decide, because the treasurer has to open these accounts and has to give the authority to open these accounts. So we would have to make this decision to which one of these local and government investment pools to put our short-term investments in. And if you wanted to give us a range of our surplus funds, it's not a dollar amount, it's a percentage, a range of percentage that we could stay within, that we could possibly, it wouldn't lock us in, but it would give us the flexibility to manage what we need at the time. As I said, the funds that we need are cyclical. And a lot of our reserves and our surplus funds are committed already. They are committed, so we haven't spent them, but they could be spent. So,
Well,
Madam Chair, I have a question. So your committed funds, typically, what percentage of those are typically committed?
depends on what level we're talking about. I would say the most liquid of our funds are about 15 million. I didn't want to get into dollars
No,
so
that's
much.
what I was saying, percentage.
Yeah, I don't know that I have the percentage, I'm sorry.
That would be probably somewhere around 30% then.
So,
Okay. I like the 80-20 concept, keep 20% to do whatever you need with, and then use your 80 to do other stuff.
that's why I was thinking about a range in these different pools.
I personally think that the board would be prudent to act fairly quickly with the way the variance is. I mean, you double the return that we're currently getting in that SPIA fund. So I don't think, my personal opinion is, I don't think this board needs to, go through a huge discussion over it. We already understand that our depository and the fund is already vetted, they're all rated, the bank is being insured by FDIC. So I think the security of it is the same as it is with SPIA. I mean, the SPIA fund is basically guaranteed by the state, and it's, I say guaranteed by the state. The state has obligated its funds to the various funds that it uses, and is under the same risk tolerance and risk that we are if we're participating in it. So, having said that, I'm not saying we need to make a decision today, but I think we don't need to push it out. We need to go ahead and give Pam some authority to come back with some sort of recommendation and make a motion to approve it.
That's what I would add. That Pam needs some direction today. But the timing is good for next meeting, because the 40% threshold goes into effect in February, and that times itself out. But as far as our local depository, we couldn't give her some direction as far as a percentage to present to us next meeting. As far as investments in Florida Class or some of the others, we need further discussion in that. But I would not be against some direction on what we can do with our local depository.
Well, do you feel like, first, timing, expediency, you could actually move it all into your bank, and then from your bank, you could figure out how much you wanted to put into a pool and try and gain a little bit more interest. I mean, you can do that tomorrow, or if you've got time, and start, but I don't really know how much liquid, or how many of our funds we can just move, what you feel like that we could, but with a money market account, it's in and out. It's easy. And it sounds like even with the pool, it's a one-day deal, so it's not like it's locked up in a CD. But you could move that money, however much we can move, and go ahead and get it into a higher yield interest money market account. And then you can have a little bit more time to figure out how much you want to then take out and put in the pool.
I agree.
Well, back to my point, Madam Chair, that's where we got to have Pam's input. She knows the numbers. She knows how our cash flow is. She knows how much of those funds are obligated long-term and how much are short-term coming up. So, hate to put that burden back on you, Pam, but from my perspective, I'm looking for you to kind of make a recommendation that, we need 25% of our funds here and 40% with SPIA and, the other 35% with the other person. So.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I think along the lines of what you were recommending, I think if we stair-step this with what it seems the consensus may be, is that we do work with the treasurer to maybe set up this, the depository account with First Federal, be able to move some of our funds after we do the analysis to that account, and then come back after a period of time and our review, having a chance to look at some of these local government investment pools as Florida Class has come and talked to us about theirs, but then come back and maybe talk to it could be at the treasurers or a committee as Hugh was talking about, come up with, if we want to move monies into a local government investment pool. But right now, I think the most prudent would be to utilize the depository. But we would need to have I'm not sure if we will have to come back in February with an approval to sign the agreement with First Federal. I don't think we do, because the treasurer has the authority to open an account. And so we could actually do that at any time, and we could then, we could make a choice about keeping the 40% floor at SPIA and then moving the others to this investment with the depository, and then come back after some discussion, as Mr. Thompson was talking about, looking at the different investment pools if we wanted to do something to diversify even further.
One of our big questions was, did we have the support of the board in our early communications, Pam and I had with this direction? And if we do have the support of the board, we'd be glad to work together and have a proposal for the next meeting.
In the meantime, go ahead and move money over to the local bank to gain that interest.
I'm sure there's an agreement that has to be signed, and Mr. Reeves has had an opportunity to look at that agreement.
I have one thing, though.
Yes,
I think the finance policy that you had referenced up there, I think that needs to be changed before we do that. So I don't think you could go ahead and set those accounts up. I think we need to bring that finance policy back at a regular meeting, let you all approve a change that would allow that, and then the next step would be to set up those.
And we can also have the proposal for the.
And that would give time to do all that.
We can have that ready for the next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, I think, Pam, your philosophy of risk management probably aligns pretty well with our board. And I think, I would be in support of getting a little bit more experience with some of these other avenues. In the same regard, I'd probably caution us going too far, too fast, all at one time as we chase yields in a period where we've seen significant change. That could, those roller coasters, they have a second half of them too, so. But yeah, I'd be looking forward backing what Mr. Thompson says with the recommendation.
So, Madam Chair, just to summarize, unless there are other questions, that at the next board meeting, I'm going to bring an updated directive, and I will do the procedures that don't have to come before the board. I don't think we bring procedures, but I'll bring forth the directive. And we will bring forth, if we're required to, a recommendation to move monies into this depository account as a first step. That's the consensus.
And Madam Chair, I'd offer, just based upon what I've seen, observed visually, I'm thinking that's the consensus of the board, to move forward with that for next month's meeting then.
All good on this end? All right, how about this end?
Well, we were gonna get Pam and go down to the Hard Rock.
I'll tell you something else too. If I went to the bank and tried to borrow some money, it'd be like 10% interest rate. I want 10% return on the investment if they're gonna borrow my money.
Or do you wanna start loaning money to the district?
Well, no, I'm talking about, the district's money going to the bank.
Come on, Richard,
5.7%.
you know you're getting that now.
That's exactly right, 9.5, exactly right.
Well, my only concern.
Somebody gotta sharpen their pencil.
My only concern is that we hold back enough money to take care of the bills and things we need to take care of, so that, you know, no matter what pops up, we're in good shape, and then invest the rest.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Sorry to take so long, but
Oh,
it's important.
we appreciate very much everybody's time. Ms. Pam, your hard work, and I am looking forward to next meeting and see what we come up with.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safely. It's looking like it's getting kind of bad out there.
It's getting close.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Today, your second workshop topic, I'm presenting the district's Swanee River Basin 2024 Surface Water Improvement and Management Plan. It is an update to the previously approved swim plan for the Swanee River Basin. We are keeping the same priority water bodies. We've updated data and information that we know about each of those. We've updated the project lists in the plan. And we've pared down the plan quite a bit to focus the content on elements that are actually required in the swim rule. So we'll talk a little bit about that. This presentation will serve as the public workshop component for the plan update as required by statute and rule. And I'll begin by going over some of the basics for folks who aren't familiar with swim plans, in case anybody's listening who's not. Then we'll walk through some of the information we've included in the plan update, lay out next steps in our process, and show folks where to find the plan online. First, the SWIM acronym stands for Surface Water Improvement and Management. SWIM plans are our documents that guide our work towards improving the district's priority water bodies. A SWIM plan summarizes what we know about a water body related to its past and present conditions, and it outlines strategies and specific projects aimed at improvement and protection of the water bodies. We have a legislative basis for the SWIM plan. It came from the 1987 SWIM Act, which directed the water management districts to identify priority water bodies and develop plans for improving and managing them. We also have the SWIM rule in Florida Administrative Code, which lays out very specifically the elements every SWIM plan will contain. These are listed on the next two slides for you. I will not read them all. Examples are descriptions of the systems and conditions leading to the need for restoration and protection, description of land uses, permitted discharge activities in the basins, strategies for restoring and protecting water quality standards, a list of active restoration projects, and estimates for funding needed to carry out those projects. So those are what SWIM plans are required to contain by the rule, and like I said earlier, one of the things we did in updating this plan is try to really pare down the fluff from the previous plans and just kind of focus on the elements that are in the rule. Okay. So the Swanee River Basin Swim Plan includes the Swanee, Alapaha, Withlacoochee, Santa Fe, and Ichetucknee rivers. The swim plan area is shown on this map, highlighting the 5 priority water bodies and their contributing basins. These 5 water bodies were prioritized for swim planning by the district beginning in the 1980s. The restoration and protection needs of each water body are centered on the concepts of protecting flows and water quality. To that end, the plan goes into a good bit of detail about the district's work monitoring and collecting water quality and flow data in each of the 5 rivers and their associated springs. The map on this slide shows the 32 surface water quality monitoring stations that are referenced in the current swim plan draft. The plan presents current status and trends for nutrients in each of these 5 rivers and their associated outstanding Florida springs. So it's sort of a summary of some of the information that I've shown you in the past about water quality in the district. Note on this map, the green colored basin, that's the Santa Fe River Basin, and the next slide's going to show you a close-up of the stations in that basin. So for each of those rivers, in the plan, we lay out the stations that you see on the map and what water quality data we have for them for the period of record and what their current trend and status are. I'm just going to show you as an example today, in the interest of time, the Santa Fe data and those zoom in of those stations on this map. And so this is an excerpt of the water quality data cited in the plan for the Santa Fe River system, including 6 river stations and 5 outstanding Florida Springs stations within that system. So in addition to water quality that we show for each of the 5 water bodies in the plan, we also talk about in the plan land use changes for 2020 based on looking back at 2011 and 2017 acreages. There's a map in the plan, there's a table in the plan, a little bit of discussion about how those numbers were derived. In addition to land use changes, the plan addresses point and non-point pollution sources extensively. We rely on information from DEP. We cite information from the DEP TMDL and BMAP reports, and maps and lists of existing permitted stormwater and wastewater facilities. For the purposes of this plan, we define point sources as permitted stormwater and wastewater facilities, which are shown on these 2 maps. Non-point sources are also described in the plan. They are based, and our descriptions are based upon the most recent DEP BMAP for the Suwannee River Basin. So we spend a lot of time on water quality in the plan and kind of showing data that we have on water quantity issues that we address in the plan for each water body. We rely heavily on citing the current work the district has already done related to the district's water supply assessment, water supply plans, and minimum flows and minimum levels. This is a list of the documents that we referenced in the plan, and also a map showing the district's current MFL schedule and priority list. So after laying out all of this information about the 5 water bodies that we're focusing on in this plan, we list strategies for restoration and protection of those water bodies, and the strategies fall under several very broad categories, including ongoing monitoring and research, water supply planning, and water resource development and conservation strategies. And finally, the plan concludes with lists of active and proposed projects that will support the improvement of priority water bodies within the swim plan area. And as of the current revision, we have 27 active projects and 4 proposed projects on the list in the plan. Listed on this slide are some of the projects that we have in the plan. I think most of those are actually active projects, and the city of Newberry reuse is still a proposed project. So in October, you might recall, we circulated a press release and notices to stakeholders. We posted the draft plan online for stakeholder and public review, and we solicited potential swim projects to support the plan from our stakeholders. We've received agency and citizen comments and 2 project proposals to date, and the revised draft is now available online for review. At this point in time, we anticipate bringing the plan back to the board for a public hearing and to request the board's initial approval next month. And once we do have a board-approved plan, we will submit that to DEP for their final review, and we'll bring it back to the board for formal adoption. That's the process. So we'll be back to talk about it some more. Both of the currently approved plans and the 2024 Suwannee River Basin Plan Update are available through the MySuwanneeRiver.com homepage by clicking on the Science and Data tab at the top, and then the Plans and Reports on the left menu, and then scrolling down to the Surface Water Improvement Plans link. And that concludes my presentation to you, if you have any questions for me.
Questions for today?
Just one quick one. The the increase in toxicity of the water at one of the slides you had up there, it had that was 3, I saw Post Springs was one of them, is increasing. Is that an historical thing? I mean, has it been increasing for a period of time, or is it something that's fairly new?
Madam Chair? Okay. Well, first of all, these are showing just for nitrate data. We show in the plan nitrate, total nitrogen, and total phosphorus, because those are the nutrients of interest in our district. And so the increasing for all of them, if we show an increasing trend, it is for the period of record. Well, actually, that's a good point. It is for the last 15 years up until the last date, the last year that we collected data. And in this case, what the data that are presented in the plan are as of 2022. So if there is a trend, it would be from 2007 to 2022. And whether or not that's increasing over a period of time, I guess I'd have to look at the scatter and tell you what I thought of that. But statistically speaking, it's over the last 15 years.
I was just curious if it's something that's, if we, at some point, are going to see a decrease, or if it's just going to continue to increase. I'm assuming those numbers are well below what a critical level would be.
So we have a for nitrate specifically, we have a threshold for the springs and the rivers that are spring influence, the Santa Fe and the portions of the Suwannee that are spring influence. And that number is 0.35 milligrams per liter. So we have a few stations that are under that at this point, but most of them are above it. And some of them are well above it at this point.
Madam Chair, if I may add, Mr. Thompson, with that, there is a drinking water standard that's been adopted, which is 10 milligrams per liter.
Yes, sir.
I think it is. It's well below that, but it is above the total maximum daily load, the TMDL.
It's above the number that's going to cause algae to grow and create problems in our springs. Yeah.
If I may ask one more, relative to Post Springs, Susie, wasn't it meeting the TMDL about within the last decade, or do you recall right off the top of your head?
Off the top, I've seen probably the last 4 years of data, and it's within the TMDL over the last 4 years, because it's below the.
So it's relatively
the
recent, the increasing trend.
So it can be below the TMDL and still have an increasing trend because the background levels
Because of
would have
where
been
it's at.
lower.
That septic system that was installed out at Poe that we went out and visited some time back, has there been any data whatsoever now to indicate that that's a success, or?
That's a good question, Madam Chair. I don't know that there are any specific data that show that, but I could probably plot that on a graph and see if what we have and how, align where the actual system was put in place and see if we see any improvements that way.
That's curious. That'd be interesting information to have. You want to feel good about some of the money you spend sometimes, to know that you're actually doing something that's benefiting rather than just
Madam Chair, if I could, for Poe Springs specifically, Poe is a relatively unique spring. One of the other factors at Poe is it has relatively low oxygen, and that also influences how much you see in terms of nitrate, just based on the chemistry that occurs when you have low oxygen in a system. There is another factor there that is influencing the nitrate levels that we see in Poe Springs, in addition to the loading aspect, which would have been assisted by that project.
I don't want to get into a long dissertation here, but what causes it to be more or less oxygen? It's all coming out of the same hole, I thought.
So if a system is low in oxygen, so there are microbes, there are living things in the water. Those microbes preferentially consume oxygen when they're in the water. So they'll work with the organic matter that's there, they'll consume oxygen, and they'll break things down. But in the absence of oxygen, they will go towards nitrate, which is the next most desirable thing for them to use as fuel as they're breaking down these organic matter and things like that. So in a system where you have very low oxygen, you would also tend to see lower nitrate, because nitrate would start to get consumed by those microbes that are present in the system.
Okay.
I'll cut it there versus a
Above my
dissertation.
pay grade, but I get it now.
Well, are all the little bugs causing the oxygen to be lower, or is the age of the water a cause of oxygen to be different?
Both of those can be factors. It turns out it's really difficult to tease out for something like Poe. The origin story of that water becomes very critical. Some of it could be older, deeper water, and that would have low oxygen, but you could also have a situation where you have oxygen that gets consumed by microbes, then you also have lower oxygen in that water.
Yes, sir.
Some of our highest readings, the trending is not applicable. Why?
Madam Chair? Because for those stations, we haven't, so back to the statistical analysis that we use to determine those trends, it requires a 15-year worth of data set. And so some of those, we don't have a steady 15-year data set that we can draw on. We're getting close because we've been looking at them long enough with these eyes that we're getting close to having the long enough data set for the NAs, but so far, not enough.
All right, well,
But
say
you-
for example, Devil's Ear at 1.7, that's twice what anything else is. What's the short-term trend? Is that steady going up? Is that number consistent?
Madam Chair, I cannot remember in my mind's eye what the scatter plot for Devil's Ear looks like. I've looked at it, and I want to say it is one of the ones that's going up, but I don't want to misspeak, so I can come back with that information. Remember, on a prior presentation about water quality specifically, we had some scatter plots that we were showing for different spring systems. For those specifically where we don't have a statistical trend, you can kind of look at the dots and see what's happening. And so I can bring some of those back.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? Where is Devil's Ear on the map? I'm not sure. It doesn't say
It's the one that
Devil's
says
Ear.
DER
You know where
010 C1, so it's just downstream of Poe.
Eastern,
So it's
Eastern Swanee County.
far south.
Mr. Sessions, you know where Jenny Springs is at?
Yeah, it's right there close.
You're there.
Because I was just trying to correlate something with the Swanee, you know, as far as what we were getting from the north, as far as nitrates in the Swanee coming south out of Georgia, just trying to figure that out. But it's got to be something close around Devil's Ears causing all that.
I was out with the Secretary of DEP on a tour there one day, and it could be readily apparent by the amount of use in that section of the river, because Devil's Ear, it's located close proximity. Is that the complex itself, Susie, that's out in the river, or is it
It's my understanding
spring
that
that's just to the east of Jenny?
the data is collected from the spring east of Jenny, the vent, the actual
Yeah,
vent.
the actual vent itself, which is where the campground area, one of the campground areas is located at there.
I was thinking there's something that has an effect on it close by.
That was some of the conversation he and I had that day anyway, when we were out there, was.
Good place for another one of those, septic installations out there.
It would be, it was utilized.
How hard would it be to put the data on a graph to where we could see, I know it's increasing, but it's increasing over a 15-year period or greater. Was it increasing and now we've got it kind of leveling off, or is it leveled off and then it's increasing? Would be interesting to see at what point we had the biggest impact.
Like maybe Devil's Ears increased since COVID with all the camping?
Madam Chair, we will take a look at them and try to bring you the most interesting ones that tell us something when we
Okay.
report on water quality very soon. That'll be my goal.
That would maybe answer something on Poe also, to see if it's starting to level off a little bit or decrease, even
Yeah.
though the overall is increased, but.
That other installation in Gilchrist County down at
Otter Springs.
Otter Springs, it was much more intensive than the one at Poe. Poe was a organic type
Yeah, they trained it.
situation.
If I remember, Mr. Thompson, when you and I were out there, the system at Poe was more of a change in the drain field and the media in the drain field itself, which was one strategy for achieving reduced discharges. The other one at Otter was a completely different type system that was it actually lends itself to an anaerobic condition and an aerobic condition with it.
Yeah, that's, how long has it been since that was installed? It's been about a year, hasn't it?
The one at Otter?
Yeah.
I think it went online probably about a year ago.
It's probably too early to get any data, but it'd be something to watch as time goes on to see if that
Yes, sir.
does reduce the nitrogen load in that spring. If it
Yeah,
does,
that data, it's actually being collected for Otter right there by the,
it seemed like that was gonna be possibly a solution, solution that might be affordable, if not, something the district could get involved with trying to take some of these septic tanks offline in those environments where you got multiple.
right, where you've got higher density.
Multiple higher density, yeah.
Areas.
And Otter's not up there. It's not one that we have on our list.
It's in the swim plan.
We have
Is
it
it?
in, we have it
Okay.
in the plan, and it's also one that we regularly collect at, so.
Any other
Yeah, I
questions?
think good to see any data on anything that we do have a project working
Mm-hmm.
on.
See if we can see any results.
See if it's at least maintaining the nothing else.
Okay, any other questions? All good down here? Okay, all right, that
Thank
was
you very
very
much.
interesting, thank you very much. All right, I think that probably concludes our workshop. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? We have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, motion carried.